Today's story erupts into action. Flanked by this dazzling, spotlight-stealing woman, she unleashed a dazzling display of her skills by obliterating a stone target with a colossal, blinding flash missile. Her little daughter is bursting with triumph because she just nailed a target a kilometer away. She snaps at Ayn. Zero in on Gollum's heart and picture the stones ringed around it like loyal cronies. The boy snatches the memo and he dives headfirst into channeling his magic. He unleashes his own flash missile. The golem detonates in a thunderous blast. Every jaw slams open at the explosion's colossal size. She crackles with pride, beaming at her brother's epic power. Ayn's mom explodes, ripping into him for wrecking the target and smashing the stones that were supposed to be his allies. She snaps, reminding him he was only supposed to hit the spot she pointed, not unleash full-on demolition. At just 10, Ayn's magic rips past every limit, crowning him a bona fide super genius. Even wielding world-shattering power, he still fumbles through everyday stuff like any kid. If he keeps this up, he could become a bumbling, magical goofball. Ayn's sister squeezes their mom's hand, thanks her for guiding him, and vows to train too next time. The boy thundered a proud shout-out for his sister. She declares she commands a one-of-a-kind arsenal of skills and hard-earned knowledge. She proclaims his magic unmatched and crowns him a genius in her eyes. You're saying it's all because of this? She burns with the dream of becoming him one day. While Ind admires his sister, we slam the brakes and plunge headfirst into his backstory. About 10 years ago, explorers uncovered a brand new continent, and on its untamed soil, the city of Melia sprang to life. Ind jolted awake in the baby's body. He'd been reincarnated into a medieval fantasy world. Shunned by everyone in his past life, relentless hardships battered him and left him shaken to his core. Back then, family dinners were a warm, noisy ritual. Then a sudden accident ripped his parents from his life. He cashed in his inheritance and plunged headfirst into life as an EET. He relied on nobody, and nobody could rely on him. He haunted his own life, silent, unseen, and hollow. Doubt gnawed at him over his lifestyle, then, bam, his life snapped shut and he died young. My soul slammed into a newborn's tiny body. It teetered on the razor's edge between life and death. In his previous life, Ind had devoured every novel about people whisked into other worlds. And now, thrown into one himself, he couldn't believe it was happening to him. They doted on him, and he practically burst with ecstatic energy, and a blazing certainty hit him. They needed him. Meet the family's fierce nanny and tireless maid. Lolina, the dark elf, swept in like a shadowed guardian and nursed him back from the brink. To him, his mom wasn't just pretty. She could be the most breathtaking person to ever walk the earth. She froze solid, every muscle turning to wood. When he was barely a baby, his mom sparked his dad's magic by showing him basic material transfer. His new dad sneered. No wand, no way to cast the spell. She shot back that she'd been doing it all by herself since she was 6. Raised in Usea, the magic capital, he shrugged off spells like a morning stretch, while his dad, born in Runlesia, could barely string 2 incantations together. She snapped. Quit whining and start practicing. They wore noble titles but were nothing more than low-ranking aristocrats, and Melia was a tiny hamlet of just 70 souls. Magic still refused his call, and he teetered on the brink of surrender, ready to toss in the towel, and his mom snapped, fury exploding from her. It only took 5 magical points, and he still couldn't pull it off. She fired him up, urging him not to let it drag him down and insisting that, as a man, he had to be driven to succeed. He proclaimed he loved her with every beat of his heart, and swore no one could ever outlove him. Most nights Ayan tumbles into the crib in his parents' room and is out like a light. There's a baby in the room. Wouldn't you expect them to rein in the chaos? Nope. It didn't go down like that. He's forced to wrestle through every painfully awkward moment. The IN zeroed in on the material transfer trick he'd overheard earlier. He zeroed in on a teddy bear. He poured every scrap of will into the plush, and it finally twitched. Then realization hit. Raw magic thrummed at his fingertips. A storm roared inside him, even in that deceptively cute little baby body. When his parents spotted something stir, he feigned sleep, lying perfectly still like a coiled trap. From now on, whenever his parents got lovey-dovey, he'd burst out flaunting his powers. Push his mana too far and he'd collapse, lights out. That normally takes 2 to 3 days to bounce back, but he's just a baby. His little body could be utterly drained in a single day. He honed his redirecting skills. Alone, emotions raging, he teleported his poop straight into the potty. A wild, magical escape. Days blurred into a long, relentless march until today, when his mom declared she'd start measuring his magic. The instant the test ended, she staggered back as the kid's magic blazed at 496 MP. He hammered his magic with the relentlessness of a weightlifter, and the results hit like a freight train. He'd been hammering out top-tier magic since he was a baby. At just 10, he crackled with the most awe-inspiring magic his generation had ever seen. He even told his mom Carla his mana ran dry every 2 days, and she shrugged it off as him being dramatic. The boy swore he'd been struck by magical nausea, insisting his magic was running on empty. A guy suddenly burst into their training session. He swore the carriage died on him while he was hauling goods. He blurted, "Can I borrow the stone golem you've been working on?" The boy summoned a gola in an instant. He snatched the oars lying around and shoved them into the guy's hands to haul him out. The village now thrums with life, swelling to about 200 people. They're desperate for farmers. More people means they must grow way more food. But the whole place is nothing but harsh, unyielding rock. The boy's been summoning golems to haul away the wreckage. Fueled by that roaring well of magic, his golem can relentlessly toil for ages. He can sprout extra arms to tackle any task, and his mom couldn't stop bragging about him. Golem ripped his shape-shifting trick straight from a Gundam figure, then learned to command it from the electric buzz of the new era internet. The whole village gaped as his golem hoisted massive loads like feathers, jaws dropping at his mastery. He bristled every time someone dared call him young, even though he was still a kid, and deep down, he fed on the roar of recognition. He'd been fastidious to the bone and shackled to a low, nagging sadness in his past life. Living here lit my soul on fire, and being part of this family felt like finally finding my tribe. The moment the village finally levels up into a town, the Aya Empire will blast it into the spotlight with hard-earned imperial recognition. Buried in the shame of F rank now. Claw up even one tier and they could watch new members swarm to them. Armed with his modern knowledge, curiosity roared inside him. He had to find out how far he could push things. The next day, his little sister burst in, clutching the results of her medical exams. She fidgeted like a caged sparrow, twisting, tapping, and biting her lip whenever she stood before him. He landed a tiny, affectionate pat on her head and thanked her again, gratitude lighting his eyes. Amelia arrived a year after him. Her world shattered the day a single, devastating accident ripped her parents away. They swept Anne into their home and raised her like she was their very own. She wasn't his blood. He swore he'd watch over her. Instincts clawed at him, and he fought to rein them in. They were inseparable, glued to each other's side. Their dad, Mr. Keynes, stands alone as the only doctor in Melia's border villages. With his mom, he throws himself into ruthless training. Whenever he gets the chance, he's at his dad's clinic helping patients. Around his new dad, he bristles with nerves, but hand him a medical case and he flips into a total pro. 2 quick glances and he pins down a patient's exact ailment. A venomous snake had sunk its fangs into the patient. They told him they'd have to amputate his leg. He absolutely lost it, panic exploding out of him. When he heard it, he dropped to his knees, pleading for any way to save his leg. But the medical science here was still rudimentary. Here, doctors aren't saviors. Everyone scrambles for healing magic and potions. Tracking down a genuine healing mage is a nightmare. They're rare and demand a king's ransom. I keep dreaming of skilled, affordable doctors who can actually help everyone. The boy's breath hitched. Losing only a leg was the man's brutal stroke of luck. That single bite almost claimed his life. At last he relented and flopped onto the exam table so the doctor could dive right in. Ein and Amelia braced, raw power crackling around them as they prepared to unleash it. The boy unleashed a paralyzing spell. The girl plunged into a deep, unshakable sleep. Anesthesia was gone, so they scrambled to conjure a last-second spell that numbed the agony and silenced fear, letting the operation press on. When the scalpel finally fell silent, the boy's dad says ever since he pushed uniforms at the office, post-op deaths have plummeted like they went on a crash diet. Pride blazing, the boy declared that keeping his gear clean and heated was his key. "I guarantee everyone feels absolutely awesome after surgery," Dad bristled, shaking his head. Some of it was just way too out there for him. Amelia lunges in, defending her brother and jabbing at the numbers. "See? They clearly show the difference since we started following his advice." He'd waged a one-man crusade to drag people into the light of modern medicine, only to watch his words slam against a brick wall. Mealy's obsessed with soap now, and at first everyone recoiled, calling it downright bizarre. She barreled through the crowd, thrusting free samples into everyone's hands and daring them to wash up with it. The moment people used it, grime vanished and a blast of pure freshness hit them. Women erupted in disbelief as it banished body odor and cost a tiny fraction of perfume. They squealed every time a frothy tsunami of bubbles exploded as they washed with it. The moment those free samples hit, sales exploded. The boy declared to his dad that if the world learned proper sanitation and soap use, Melia's economy would skyrocket. His dad's jaw dropped. Then he whooped. This plan would blow up and he was stoked. The boy had dreamed it up, and their village still had no specialty. He insisted to his dad that they start making soap, not for the cash, but to rally everyone onto the health train. Their planet's history is scarred by cholera and plague, epidemics unleashed by generations of filthy neglect. Where others scrape for a single drop, Melia plunge into abundance and bathe every day. This isn't just about tilling fields to grow the village. It's a fight to heal the people and reignite dying industry. And if they want to level up, they have to pull it off. Every word he spoke melted my heart into a puddle. A year later, Ain's birthday exploded onto the calendar. Gifts rained down into their arms. He swept his sister into a fierce hug, eyes blazing, and thanked her for grinding non-stop to make that party legendary. She wrapped him in a fierce hug and vowed she'd do anything for him. Every time his sister pounced on him, his face exploded into crimson and he turned into a helpless, flustered mess. His mom pressed a hand to his chest and scanned his aura. The readout leapt to 600 MP of current magical power. Amelia's jaw dropped. Even as a teen, he was piling on almost 100 MP in a single year. Keep this up and he'll blast into 999 MP, the highest any humans ever reached, and become a legend, yet his skills are still painfully basic. His little sister smirked and reminded him that with a total magical capacity of 600, he already outclassed the court mage. Their mom drilled into the boy that raw magic alone wouldn't make him a top-tier mage. Without real skill, he'd never be one. Amelia blurted she'd heard Lady Marlene had recently pulled off a rejuvenation spell. Their mom prophesied it would race across the continent like wildfire. She explained the side effect swaps your gender, so she flipped from a dude in his 70s into a 10-year-old girl. She couldn't fathom what was rattling around in that old guy's head to make him pull all this off. With all this gossip flying, whispers exploded into chaos. Memory slammed into her. The main Hawkwood family had sent the boy a birthday gift, a magical artifact. Enchanted glasses that via a linked channel unleash a barrage of wild functions. In that world, it commanded a king's ransom. He was floored. His mom's parents were still reaching out to them. When his parents were young, the A's Empire and the Runcia Kingdom were tearing each other apart in war, so a marriage between them was unthinkable. She ripped herself away from the towering noble house and bolted straight into the arms of the boy's dad. At 116 years old, the nanny Luina spun this story like a living legend. His mom warned that the main family was gunning to adopt Ayn for shady reasons, and she's been firing off regular letters to keep them clued in on the boy's progress. Amelia buzzed with excitement. She knew this was the epic shot her brother needed to bridge the two families. Their mom owned up. She'd only ever told them about the full measure of his magical power. The boy snatched up at the glasses he'd just gotten and thrust them onto his face, and his mom squealed they looked perfect on him. He stormed up to his little sister and snapped, "What's up with you?" Beads of sweat glistened on her skin as heat surged up her neck, setting her cheeks ablaze. She gasped that he looked jaw-droppingly handsome in those glasses. Unease prickled him. These looked like ordinary glasses, but curiosity shoved him into testing every feature, and the lenses promised they could crank magnification and even reveal ghosts and spirits. Perspective ripped open reality for him. He could stare right through clothes, walls, and ceilings. Electric with anticipation, he burned to see what lay hidden beneath those clothes. He gripped the glasses, certain they'd rewrite the rules. As a dude, he'd be robbing himself blind if he didn't use them. He snapped the perspective around, throwing the whole scene into a brand new light. He surged forward, burning to see what everyone craved. Thunderstruck, he gaped at what stood right before him. His mom? She fell flat. Unease crawled up her spine, and she realized with a jolt how bizarrely uncomfortable she felt. She caught him red-handed, ripped the glasses away in a heartbeat, and Amelia's eyes snapped wide as everything clicked into place. He flashed a cocky grin and boasted he hadn't even unleashed the glasses' true power. His sister snapped, "Absolutely not," and shut it down. Her cheeks burst into crimson. She was mortified by what he'd done. The perspective function slammed shut, bolted tighter than a vault. She rounded the corner and froze. Her brother sat there, slumped and crushed, staring into nothing. She jabbed his arm, trying to lift his spirits, and grinned. "If you really want, I'll let you see without the glasses." But the boy scoffed and shrugged. Checking on his sister wasn't worth the trouble. Every instinct in him screamed to use that function on the village's cutest girls. Rage boiled in the little girl's veins at his words, unleashed a stinging slap right to his face, and she bolted away, sobs racking her like a gut-wrenching scene ripped straight from a sad movie. They spun on their heels and walked away, leaving the boy sitting there. My mind reeled. I had no idea what had just gone down. The boy's day blasted to life before sunrise. Every time he dove into a simple chore, the room exploded with cheers. And he was out there stepping in to help others? He siphoned that power and blasted his gargoyle skills into overdrive. As he crushed the task, even more people surged in, all looking to him for help. He whispered a few razor-sharp words, locked his focus, and unleashed a spell that catapulted the gargoyle into a wild delivery run, letting him drop packages wherever he wanted. This village didn't just put gargoyles to work ferrying packages and turning soil in the fields. There was one more thing it was known for. He gushed to Ayn that his sister had been a total angel for helping him pen a letter to the boy. He raved about her beauty, hailing her as an angel. But Ayn rolled his eyes. He wasn't buying it. Writing belonged to nobles and merchants. Most commoners couldn't, so Amelia stepped in as their fierce scribe, writing for anyone who needed her. Their mom ran a tight ship, so they devoured every lesson she hammered into them. The afternoon was only beginning. He refused to let his thoughts swallow him. He slid on the new glasses and the world snapped into focus. He could see way farther than usual. He never imagined the change would slam into him with such savage force. That feature let him flat out ditch the classes he hated, soaring over the woods that ring the city. His gaze snagged on his dad and Dutton patrolling, leaning in to chat with a peasant woman plucking ripe fruit. Dutton fought at his side, a dwarf built like a tank, and legend says he felled a saber-toothed tiger with one crushing punch. Ein's dad heaved his sword in a furious strike, but it didn't even leave a scratch on the beast. I snapped the glasses to a new setting, pulse racing as I waited to see what they'd reveal. He unleashed the lattice function, and the grid flared to life. It rips open the veil so he can spot ghosts and spirits invisible to everyone else. He gaped as spirits swarmed the place, but hope shattered. There were no ghosts. The visions just slam images into him. No conversation, no answers. He can't actually talk to the spirits, so it's a letdown. Orthodox faith sits on the throne as the IE Empire's official religion, dominates the continent as its largest creed, and brands spirits as dangerous, cursed forces. In that world, witches, wizards, humans, and demi-humans who commune with spirits cloak their gifts and slip through life like ghosts. Even with all that bearing down, they refused to flinch. Ian's breath caught. He found them impossibly cool and elegant. He locked onto a wind spirit that pulsed with a wild alien rhythm unlike the rest. She stood, right in front of him. Words clawed at his throat as he fought to force them out. So she surrendered and drifted away like a pale wisp on the wind. Relief crashed over him. He stepped back to keep her at arm's length while his thumb hovered, ready to kill the perspective function. In his last glance, birds burst into view, racing straight toward him. Birdmen were swooping toward Amelia, and Ein's gut screamed. These winged figures never drifted into places this quiet. A chill crawled up his spine. Something about that happening screamed wrong. Stonebirds loom like living boulders, hungrily devouring humans and demi-humans alike. Knowing the Birdman would be doomed without him, the boy hurled himself into the fray. He braced himself and primed the glasses to test their next feature, the automatic aim lock. He refused to let that happen right before his eyes. He slammed the command. The function ignited and raw power burst free. He plunged his mind into the Evil Eye's vision. That blasted a searing beam dead-on into the stone bird, and the monster slammed up a shimmering barrier, swallowing the boy's attack. He walked away, leaving the boy reeling. The stone bird unleashed a crackling magical barrier, proving it was no ordinary feathered friend. If he failed, everyone else would be dragged into the crossfire. Deep water would swallow all of Amelia, too. He focused again, unleashed his piercing magic, and prayed this time it would actually work. His glasses teetered on the brink of snapping, leaving him with only a few desperate shots. Once again, the stone bird intercepted his strike, its stony wings slamming into his blade, and it closed in on the boy, swallowing the space between them. The creature surged forward, closing to a hair's breadth. The boy's breath hitched. He'd just realized it was still over 30 meters away. A stone bird that massive should have been shattered to dust by now. The great stone bird is the largest bird ever, measuring a jaw-dropping 18 to 50 meters. And with a single thunderous wing beat, it tears the air to summon crackling, impenetrable magical barriers. No one had laid eyes on one of these bad boys in ages. He glanced down and caught his dad and Dutton staring up, panic carved into their faces. The boy knew one greedy gobble could swallow him, and that would be game over for both of them. Amelia vanished too, and with her went every person he cared about. A monstrous bird barreled straight for the village, and our hero launched himself into its path, refusing to let it reach the village. He clenched his jaw and charged, hell-bent on tearing it down on the spot. He ripped open the heavens with a full-blast wave of magic, and his magic crashed into the stone bird's barrier, sparks flying, until one of them finally crumbled. His glasses teetered on the brink of shattering. The boy clenched his jaw and willed himself to hold on a little longer. He shattered the bird's shield, and he slammed it dead center. The giant bird plunged in a savage nosedive from the sky. Relief slammed into the boy like a tidal wave the moment he finally took it down. Patting himself on the back, sleep slammed his eyelids shut and he crashed to the floor. He hurtled into the nearby river. Every spell drained from him. He couldn't swim and he couldn't even fly. He thrashed at the waves, fighting to keep his head above water. The current yanked him under. He thrashed for air, eyes glued to the surface, waiting for someone to save him. His dad launched himself into the water. He yanked the boy up from beneath the water and hauled him to the surface, snatching his life back. He pulled him into a fierce, desperate hug and whispered, "You're safe now." His dad swore he'd tear him free from that place, no matter what it took. He treasured the boy like a priceless gem. The man clutched him in a tight, urgent embrace. He launched him straight into the waiting hands of the grizzled old man on the riverbank, who roared, "You nailed it, boy!" He spun back, saw the boy's dad in the river, and panic ripped through him. A little further down, a colossal waterfall thundered into the gorge, hurling curtains of spray and a roar that shook the air. One crushing strike from the man and the game would be over. The boy's eyes snapped wide as realization slammed into him. Panic clawed at his throat, and he refused to let that happen. He watched his dad slump, weak and completely out of gas. He could still see the grin that split his face the moment he hauled him from the water. That was the last time the boy ever saw his father. The man who could have dumped him in the river and simply walked away. A thrill slammed through the boy. This, he thought, was the spirit of a true man. Suddenly, a mysterious shadow loomed behind Isekai'D and the sadness clinging to him. Everyone's jaws dropped as a wind spirit streaked in and yanked the boy's dad out of the water. A tiny spirit called a sylph, free whenever the wind blows, swooped in and saved the boy's dad. Ditching class, she stumbled on Ian's glasses, watched him blast the bird with a laser, and curiosity snapped to life. Her eyes snapped to the guy who'd saved Megan. He teetered on the waterfall's edge, a heartbeat from plunging over. She dove in like a comet, snatched him from the jaws of danger, and hauled him to safety. Two birdmen, one Elder Eagles and the other Elder King Fall, swooped down to parley with the little spirit. She snapped, no dates, no selling her paintings, and don't even ask her about religion. When she finally peered at them, the little one gasped. Those were the birdmen they'd rescued. The eagles implored her to leave that human with them. Curiosity flared and she blurted, "Are you planning to eat the boy?" They swore they'd drag him back to the village themselves to repay the favor. She didn't hesitate. She thrust the boy into their arms and they marched them both home. His heart leapt when he spotted his dad standing there too. He crashed back into bed, relief roaring through him as he thanked the universe that his dad was alive. His little sister, sprawled in bed, announced that two birdmen had swooped in and hauled them home, and she was stoked they were safe. Peeking from afar, the little girl gaped as the birdmen kept their word and marched back to hand the boy his glasses. She could keep watching, but unease flared as the two brothers jammed into one bed while other beds in the room sat empty. While chatting with her sister, Ian admitted the birdman had blindsided him and slipped him a birdman set that floods him with strength and lets him take to the skies. They begged to head back to that village. They still hadn't gotten the chance to thank him properly. You soaked up the hero tag and ripped across the sky with Birdman. Total flex. A muffled commotion erupted from her parents' room. Amelia's eyes snapped to them, pulse spiking. Were they sparring? Honing their fighting skills? She marveled that Mom's moves are still flat-out epic, even now. Power surges through her, and her love for their dad is unwavering. She swore they were trading punches. The boy ripped away the illusion and revealed what was really going down. Time blurred as Sylph stared at the boy using the glasses until boredom swallowed her. Ian slammed through relentless training, forever hungry to level up his attacks. Today he poured everything into mastering the magical spear strike. He still couldn't rein in his manners. It shredded the ability, scattering it so thin its power drained away. Every spell he cast sent Sylph into a roar of cheers, exalting the boy's surging power. He clawed forward with everything he had, but the road ahead stretched on without mercy. He tailed the birdmen like a shadow, never more than a heartbeat away. The birdmen swooped down and vowed to spend one more day at the boy's side. They bristled with predatory intent, every muscle primed to strike. Adrenaline hit, and the boy rocketed off beside them. Sylph sprang into step beside them. Old tales warned birds hunted humans, so they stayed sharp and watchful. Fowl snapped at the boy. "We're almost at the stonebird's nest. Are you ready?" Fired up, the boy, flanked by two birdmen, roared that the stonebirds wouldn't stand a chance. They flaunted their new powers. The birdmen stood no chance, and Sylph sat silent, drinking every word. She gaped, stunned by the colossal size of the eggs in the nest. Birds rode the wind, carving graceful arcs as they soared across the sky, while she slunk about, nosing into every shadow. The boy strapped into the birdmen's set, each buckle snapping him into place as adrenaline surged. I laughed out loud as he strapped on a birdsuit and charged straight into battle against real birds. Sylph's giggle crackled as the three pounced. She'd be the one narrating this epic battle. Ian's glasses flared to life, the lenses pulsing with the same electric hype. He unleashed his supercharged lightning vision. The boy barked at his crew. "Go for it!" The eagles bellowed, "Foul! Wait up!" One of the birdmen dove from above and unleashed a savage, lightning-fast attack. A devastating feather assault ripped through the battlefield, pummeling everyone, even their own team. Eagles surged, refusing to let Fowl and Iron take a single hit. He slammed his self-shield into place, a blazing dome flaring up to protect them. The little girl's jaw hit the floor as a tidal wave of spirits surged in to help. She couldn't sit this one out, so she dove headfirst into the fray. She lunged in front of the boy, hurling herself between him and danger to help too. Her pulse hammered as she lunged to pluck a white feather from the stone birds. Again, Ayn swore a voice from beyond cut through the silence. When the spirits hid, sound was all he could trust. No time. Cornered, the Birdman still charged straight at the enemy. In the span of a few heart-pounding seconds, just a few thunderous strikes and the fight was already all but finished. And then Iglo snarled he'd clamp him to the floor while the boy finished the job. The Birdman locked his gaze and called on the god of the wind spirits for strength. The hurricane surged to life, whipping the sky into a savage spiral. A tiny sylph, frantic with fear, convinced a single gust would snatch her right out of the sky. Shock slammed into her as Ind hoisted a boulder like it weighed nothing. She was so stunned by his strength she swore he must be cheating. He unleashed his true space-time magic. They unleashed a barrage of meteors straight at the enemy. It slammed into the stone bird dead center. The battle was over, and he left, the little girl cheering for him, her face bursting with pure joy. They dragged him back to his village. I snagged a magical leather pouch from the Birdman that shrinks anything I cram inside. The moment he joined the Hunters Guild, they slammed him with a crippling 70% tax. It's still wildly valuable, and he wrestled his glasses back into working order. Foul's memory slammed back. The boy had confessed to practicing spiritual magic, and he thrust a feather into my palm. From a colossal spirit bird whose plume shifts color with whoever holds it and reveals whether a spirit is good or bad. Sylph watched the scene unfold, curiosity burning. Did his vibe eclipse the Birdman's? The moment he clutched it, it erupted into blazing gold. The wind spirit's power burst outward, flinging the fallen eagles like leaves across the sky. Sylph wrestled with the doubt that Und might not share a real connection with her. The Birdmen dropped a bombshell. Only one human out there could pull that off. Sylph flung a blazing farewell wave at the boy. He gambled everything on his spiritual powers, betting they'd catapult him to new heights. The boy darted through the dark, hunting for someone as more voices echoed from the shadows. Today he stormed to a hard-earned victory. Night swallowed the sky, and he was already running on fumes. A noise popped up again. He snapped his head over and saw absolutely nothing. Sylph had borrowed one of those feathers for a little while. His silence screamed permission, so she pounced. Whenever she's near the boy, the air crackles. Every moment with him crackles with fun, and she's convinced boredom can't survive near him. The beauty contest at the Venaria festival exploded into action. The host roared into the mic, hyping the final beauty division contestant already known as the hottest across the new continent. She emerged, Carla Cleansan. The competition ripped into two groups. The teens on one side with Amelia blazing forward as their top contender. And in the over-18s, Carla Clean steamrolled the field, reigning as the undisputed queen of the competition. An all-ages slot opened, and Luina, the house's wet nurse, exploded into the lead as the standout contender. Clean crackled with excitement at hitting this level, even as she stood married and closing in on 30. With looks like hers, age is just a number. This quarter-elf still crackles with the reckless energy of a 20-year-old. The man kept bellowing that, because of Mayor Una Basan of Floria's desperate plea, everyone surged into the Venaria festival, electric with the promise of crowning the new continent's most beautiful. Ain's dad barked at his wife to chill. She radiated raw confidence. If she entered, she'd seize the win. She didn't just reign as the continent's most beautiful woman. She outshone the stars and stood as the most beautiful woman in the entire universe. Ayn hung back, eyes glued to the two across the way. Snapped out of his reverie, he realized the teen contest was about to kick off. Was his sister ready? He sprinted over to check on her. Shock slammed into me. She hadn't even changed yet. She shrieked that the outfit she was forced to wear was utterly mortifying. The boy snapped, "Get ready, your turn's barreling toward you." He wouldn't dare step onto a stage before that sea of faces. She breathed easy. There was nothing to worry about, because her beauty dwarfs all others. Not just on the continent, but in the entire universe. She once cringed and hid her face. Now she hangs on every syllable of her dad's words. His quiet, "You're beautiful," hit her like a wave. Tears sprang to her eyes and her chest tightened. She swore she'd pour every ounce of herself into him, then pulled him into a fierce, unyielding hug. Two other competitors lunged in and slammed them into a wild, triumphant hug. They roped the boy into cheering with them and begged him to say if their outfits were on point. Without missing a beat, he blasted them with hype, roaring that their outfits were pure fire. Amelia saw it and roared, "Cheer for me too!" All three girls vied fiercely for Ain's support, throwing everything at her to win, and the contest teetered on the edge, ready to erupt. Sabriaka Akavan Jane, the first contestant, strutted onto the stage like royalty, while the boy slipped to his dad's side. The man had been waiting for him, eyes locked on the event. The girl presenting, Count Jane's niece, stepped forward and froze the room with breathtaking beauty. On stage, she implored everyone to vote for her. Anne's jaw dropped at the knockout beauty of the girls from other cities, but the next contestant was already charging in. From Melia storms an incredible, jaw-dropping girl whose beauty stops hearts. My heart slammed against my ribs and every nerve screamed. I was a shaking mess. Amelia stepped onto the stage, her voice trembling as she forced out her name while embarrassment shook her to the bones. The crowd froze, mouths gaping, as the village girl's beauty stole every breath in the square. His jaw dropped. He gaped, even more stunned by the massive size of her airbags. Even Ein's jaw dropped. Those outfits blasted into a whole new league. He forced his nerves into ice-cold focus, muting the wild instinct clawing to seize control. She introduced herself, proclaiming she's from Melia and madly in love with the village, its shimmering lakes, and every wild corner of its nature. But above everything else, one burning passion consumes her. Rallying around her are her amazing dad, mom, and brother. She couldn't stop raving about her brother, a blazing talent who always put the village first and radiated pure kindness. He channels endless patience and searing passion into every magic lesson, and he looks breathtaking with or without his glasses. Tears already in her voice, she blurted, "No cap, he's amazing and she loves him." She screamed his name, and he went beet red in an instant. He blurted a shaky thanks, cheeks burning, and the crowd gaped, completely baffled by what had just gone down. Her cuteness hooks hearts and reels in a chunk of the votes. Some girls gnawed their nails, seething with frustration over Amelia. Isekai'D and his dad shoved their nerves aside, snagged some food, and forced themselves to chill before the results dropped. Cutting through the alleys, my eyes locked onto two girls deep in conversation. She hissed, "I already warned you. Toss out the votes for the other competitors." His dad's eyes went cold. She was a full-blown demon, like she'd been airlifted in from another continent. South of Ushia, the demon continent glares like a blistering wound of sand and dread. Its demi-humans are born with a magic crystal planted in their foreheads that stores power, called demons, and far too many are dragged into slavery. She snapped at her slave, "Act now or the results get announced," and the demon froze, eyes wide as a tide of people closed in. Whip crackling in her hand, she snarled an order. The slave would obey only her. She coiled her whip to strike the demon, but the boy's dad hurled himself in front of her. Sabria snapped, "What are you doing?" And the man snarled that the Accounts family's behavior was flat-out unacceptable. He pounded his chest, roaring that she was his slave. Ein snatched it up and realized it was just padding. Cheap stuffing meant to fake something you don't actually have. Rage boiled in her veins as she declared the slave fired and ordered them to seize her. Father and son froze, minds racing. What do we do with that girl? As they argued the slave's fate, chaos erupted around the boy's mother. Crowds roared for the trio of women from the same family who swept every division. While the boy and his dad were chatting, the final whistle blew and the village of Melia swept the board, claiming every prize. Everyone burned with curiosity, desperate to unmask the clean family's secret behind their stunning looks. After that interview, the three whipped up a buying frenzy, and the soap flew off shelves as they proclaimed it the very foundation of beauty. New settlers flooded Melia, surging past 200 souls and pushing the village to the brink of leveling up into a town. At just 12, the boy's mana surges past the 700 mark. Another breathtaking woman swept into the clean family, staking her place. Mithali, the demon slave they'd pulled back from the brink. Starting today, she slings on a maid's apron and dives headfirst into service. She rattled off her hobbies, curses, and researching springs and fires, cute as a doll, but a little too dark. Ein's mom barked at her to catch up on her studies, and the boy blurted he thought demons couldn't wield magic. She shot back that demons are banned from learning magic because it siphons the magic right out of their crystals, but witchcraft leaves their reserves untouched. In that country, people scoff, calling it superstition and shrugging off the real harm it brings. Ein's dad slammed his palm down and roared that no matter what, she would never be treated like a slave under their roof. She needed to keep her cool while she was there. The demon's eyes blazed as she vowed she'd do anything for the master who'd saved her, and she swore she'd pour every ounce of herself into the night service. The head of the household's eyes snapped to his wife's reaction. They insisted her doing the maid work alone would be enough. She shot back she'd give everything to the night service as housemaiden too. Relentless, she demanded that her reward for pouring every ounce of herself into her work seize the chance to join the master at night. I thought she was steamrolling everyone, and I watched his mom teeter on the brink of snapping. The boy's dad beckoned his mom over. He surged forward and crushed his lips to hers. He snarled he'd never take a mistress and vowed he wouldn't so much as lay a finger on any servant or slave. Kaney swore his heart belonged to no woman in the world but his wife. Ayun's heart melted at the scene, but he wished his parents had shielded the kids from the sight. Since then, Mithali appears to have slammed into a relentless grind. You can't tear your eyes away, she's always swaying. Every time the boy's dad strode by, Mithali unleashed everything she had to snag his gaze. Kaney sweeps in and leaves shattered hearts in his wake. She throws everything at him, but he doesn't even spare her a single glance. Vial clenched in her fist, she vowed if she couldn't snatch what she wanted, she'd shove the world aside and take it. Then Ian vaulted over and dove headfirst into training with his mom and sister. They were vibing when the voice sliced through the air, screaming that his house was in serious trouble. That shaky whisper quivered, and panic ripped through him. An eerie pressure slammed into his chest. He bolted for his house, desperate to see what was going down. As he closed the distance, a scene slammed into him, stole his breath, and froze him solid. His whole house erupted into a roaring inferno, flames devouring every room. Inside, mythology sprawled across Kane's chest, ringed by roaring flames. Panic ripped through Sylph. She was drowning in fear for her friend and couldn't face this alone. She summoned the squad and she screamed for everyone to rush in and haul the humans out of that blazing inferno. But they just sneered. Why should we care? The little one dropped to her knees, begging that a bond tied her to the humans who lived inside that house. Then, to save a friend, the crocodile tears ploy landed perfectly and snatched them to safety. Everyone surged behind the little one, charging straight for Ein's place. Ein planted himself before the blazing house, fighting to keep his cool as flames tore at the walls. To his knowledge, Datin and Rowena had already left the village by then, but his dad and Mithali remained trapped inside, and a few seconds later, his mom barreled in, shrieking about his dad's condition. Amelia's composure shattered. She barked to her brother that they had to chase their mom down. He insisted they let their mom go rescue their dad and Mithali. He warned the flames would leap outward and urged everyone to brace themselves if things went wild. He barked for her to hold the perimeter by the mansion and instantly pour healing magic into anyone scorched. He locked his gaze on that fire, every ounce of him bent on snuffing it out. The instant he said those words, terror slammed into her and froze her in place. He snapped that they had to contain the blaze before it leapt to the nearby houses, grabbed her and begged, "Trust me, I'll do whatever it takes." Understanding hit her like lightning, and she vowed to watch his back. He slung the bird cloak over his shoulders and shot into the sky. He figured conjuring rain with weather manipulation would take forever. The ticking clock became a merciless enemy. They had to outrun every second. Best move, he whipped a water golem into existence. Not just any dragon, a water dragon, born from the roaring tide. He roared, commanding the water dragon to surge toward the house. Nearby onlookers were sent reeling, mouths agape as the water dragon hurtled straight at them. It barreled in about 5 minutes later, like a fire truck racing to a blaze. He spun to his sister, shouting if everyone had made it out, and she fired back a steady thumbs up. He unleashed his dragon. He unleashed a roaring torrent of water that slammed into the blaze and snuffed the flames. With the blaze snuffed, the crowd erupted, hoisting the boy as thunderous cheers and heartfelt congratulations poured in for his epic save. His little sister barreled into his arms, sobs racking her as tears carved rivers down her cheeks. She declared him the town's hero, fire in her eyes as she swore she'd believed in him from the very beginning. He sneered that she was overdoing it, even after he'd already stamped out the blaze. The water blast slammed with brutal force and all but obliterated the house. Guilt gnawed at him as he cursed himself for failing to rein in his magic. She leaned in, trying to lift his spirits, when someone else popped up and told him not to sweat it. The boy's heroics lit a fire under the whole town. Neighbors grabbed hammers and swarmed the ruins, rebuilding the house brick by brick. He froze, words choking in his throat. They accidentally tore the house apart, and somehow that wreck turned into a crazy lucky break. Lost in the chatter, a sudden jolt snapped him back. His dad was still inside. Amelia jabbed a finger and nailed down exactly where they were. He froze. His dad sprawled on the bed, Mithali straddling him, and his mom just watching. Left reeling, he groped for answers, mind racing. What on earth was happening? It rocketed out of the house and hurtled all the way into the yard on its own. While En's mind scrambled to grasp it, a girl barreled in, shouting that the wind spirits had hoisted the bed and saved them. Sue and the Adona tribe worshipped the spirits, and she seemed to crackle with the aura of a spirit user. The Birdmen had already warned him about the wind spirit, and told how they'd plunged into the roaring waterfall to snatch his father back from the brink. They'd saved them twice. The boy had to show the spirit fierce, unmistakable gratitude, somehow. In Melia, where spirits are branded evil, flaunting them in public would be stepping into a hornet's nest. With everyone safe, Sylph pounced, snatching one more quirky enchanted trinket for herself, opportunist through and through. After the chaos, they crashed at the city's vice-mayor's mansion and shouted, "Save us, Sand." Because why not? 3 days later, the Ancani and Mithali are still knocked out, plunged into a brutal, unshakable sleep. They slammed a knockout dose of sleeping meds. Ein's mom snapped, her composure shattering into chaos. She conjured a feast of every imaginable dish for her husband. He clawed through drawers, desperate for anything that would snap him awake faster than a TikTok dance challenge. Amelia whipped a question at her brother. "Is Mom okay?" And he answered that he totally got why she was so frantic. All signs screamed a double drag-up was about to be unleashed. Suddenly she whipped around and grinned.
If I ever do something wild, I'm doing it with you.
I snapped at her to chill. We had to zero in and find what sparked the blaze. After that, he and Amelia split, tearing off in opposite directions to pry the mystery wide open. At last, the two shot awake from their epic nap. Straight after their chat, they slammed Mithali with the news that a crowd had spotted her gathering ingredients for that sleeping potion and that she'd just bought a mountain of firewood. That mountain of circumstantial evidence would have any detective grinning like they'd just cracked the case. Backed into a corner, she ripped the lid off and poured every juicy secret out. She set the mansion ablaze. She forced Kane to gulp coffee laced with sedative herbs until he collapsed, dragged him to bed, stripped him bare, set him on fire, then drank the coffee. She crawled into his arms, desperate to make sure they'd be together in heaven. Carla ground her teeth and vowed to steel herself for the fallout from her actions. She torched her master's house in a frenzied bid to drag him to heaven. That arson wasn't a joke, and she's staring down 3 days of first-degree torture before execution. That's how Aya's empire throws down. And after that, they'll hang what's left of her all across the city. A grisly warning to anyone who dares cause trouble. Flames roared in Carla's eyes as she snarled she'd never let her walk away in peace. He fumbled, clumsy and a little off balance. Caney begged that the slave be spared the brutal torture. They softened the execution, shortened the agony, and handed her a sliver of mercy, even to someone like her. Carla fired back. I get it. He's ridiculously kind, but he has to seize the judicial power in his hands. Go soft on serious criminals and they'll tear the justice system apart. The city's public order is about to collapse into chaos. If they slap the soft lord label on him, his authority will crumble. The city's order buckled, and crime rocketed into the stratosphere. Another fear gnawed at them. Criminals from other cities could come knocking. They had the law in their hands, but they refused to lend it to glorify that brutality. A lightning bolt idea hit me, and I slipped out of that mess in a heartbeat. He leaned forward, eyes blazing, and asked to make mythology his test subject. Connie dove headfirst into smallpox, a scourge that kills nearly half its victims, and even survivors pay a brutal price, so horrifying it's nicknamed the Devil's Disease. To obliterate smallpox from that country, the disease that had taken his parents, he poured every waking hour into studying medicine. His dad was ripped from life in brutal condition, and his mom clawed her way out alive, her body marked with scars. Crushed by the nightmare and the raw pain of losing her love, she began tearing her life apart in reckless self-sabotage. That lit a fire in her. She vowed to wipe smallpox off the face of the earth. He leaned toward Ian and laid it out, his eyes blazing with iron determination, and a cold certainty slammed into the boy. If the smallpox here matched the one from his old world, he could engineer a vaccine and unleash it to power his idea. He weaponized mythology to keep researching the disease, turning her into his test subject. Criminals often throw themselves into medical trials, ace the tests, and they walk away with a free pass for their crimes. The boy grinned, convinced the city's folks would just shrug and roll with it. Connie shot the question at Mithali. Was she down for this idea? Mithali didn't skip a beat and snapped back a quick, emphatic yes. Tears streaming, she choked out that she was wildly grateful to receive such a merciful punishment after all the messes she'd made. Caney squeezed his wife's hand, gratitude roaring as he thanked her for heeding his thoughts about the whole mess. Her smile vanished. She was clearly not thrilled. He shouted, eyes blazing, that if this helps him find the cure, he'll explode into worldwide fame. With vaccine development crawling, Mithali is trapped as a test subject for a brutal decade. If it works, she gets a free pass. In a heated huddle with the vice mayor and townspeople, they debated hauling her off and locking her up for the time being. Caney and the crew poured out so much kindness, it steamrolled that plan. Carla ripped a spell from the air and hurled it straight at the demon girl, meaning if she ever dared pull that stunt again. A blue stain crawled up her nail, and the moment it hit solid cobalt, boom, she snapped into a frog. Don't you dare pull any funny business. Mithali hurled herself into it, shouting it was a loyalty test for her master. He sprinted to the foot-powered grain machine he and Datton built, heart pounding, and whooped when he found it working flawlessly. Down in Klane's basement, they were conjuring experiments and inventions so wild they might as well have been cheating. Rapid growth hid dangerous traps, and the boy had already face-planted again and again in construction sims back in his old world. He declared to his dad the vaccine testing tools were locked down and ready. They could kick things off. A quiet, stubborn gloom still clung to Caney. His son noticed and roared they'd save hundreds of thousands, no matter what. The pep talk hit like wildfire, igniting Caney. Adrenaline flooded his veins, and he blasted into action, totally fired up. He couldn't remember a thing about smallpox. Back home, they'd snuffed it out. It hit him. An animal had been used to make the vaccine. His memory hit a blank. He couldn't tell which one, so he exploded into a rapid-fire brainstorm. He drifted, head spinning with thoughts, then suddenly crashed into Alina. She blurted an apology for getting lost in her own world. He snapped awake and blurted an apology. He'd been totally zoned out. His flawless politeness swept her off her feet, and then she yanked him into a crushing hug that left him gasping for air. He cringed every time she fussed over him like he was her little brother. Lost in thought, the place suddenly conjured a cow in his mind. Then a lightning-fast idea exploded in his head, and he fired a breathless "thanks" at her and tore off. He rocketed away, thinking bovine smallpox was a skin disease in cows that could infect humans but only caused mild symptoms. He barreled into the village of Hain and recoiled in horror. No one else there had caught smallpox. High in the highlands north of Melia, a village famous for its milk production pulses with purpose. Everyone there raises cows like it's their calling. Before they moved to this continent, folks in Ushia swore, catch bovine smallpox and human smallpox wouldn't dare touch you. A few days ago, the medicine guy barged in, laughed it off as pure superstition, and the whole room ripped him to shreds. The boy had already leapt to that exact conclusion. Survive bovine smallpox and you pick up partial immunity to smallpox. The two viruses are close cousins, so it plays out exactly like on Earth. He sprinted back to his dad, bursting with the news, and his dad just nodded, saying it made total sense. He shot off to Hain and barked, "Find Mithali," to his son. He had to prep her for the experiment and barked at him to go warn her to stop hanging with the cows before she caught bovine smallpox. In the brand new mansion, the townspeople hammered into existence. They raised horses and cows, but the cows bowed to mythology. Shuttling non-stop between Hain and Melia left the boy short. Smallpox in this world mirrors Earth so perfectly it's like you're staring down its twin. So if they unleash the bovine smallpox virus, they could bulldoze the smallpox virus into oblivion. Mithali stood under the lab's cold lights as the team closed in and fired the question. "Are you sure about this?" They'd finally reached the final stage. They were about to plunge the vaccine made from bovine smallpox blisters into people, ratcheting doses up over a few weeks. Today, they were about to unleash the smallpox virus on her. With the vaccine her dad whipped up, the demon slave would crank out enough antibodies. Mithali declared she was ready, and this experiment is a global lifeline, fighting to rescue people across the entire planet. If it's for her master, she plunges in headfirst, ready to sacrifice her life. Keynes didn't even flinch. He roared that he'd kick off the test. The boy warned that with infection a real possibility, they'd have to quarantine her and watch her like a hawk. Shock slammed into everyone. Faces froze and jaws dropped. Caney snapped that he'd have to be isolated too. A freak accident hit him. He contracted the smallpox virus too. He admitted that during his research he'd rolled up his sleeve and injected himself with the same vaccine. And he still hadn't confirmed whether it actually worked. Carla erupted, her voice raw as she demanded to know why he'd do something so reckless. Her husband swore it would work, so he plunged the smallpox vaccine right into their mythology. He had to use his own body as the test subject. And even for a single extra person, they demanded full clinical trials. He's hell-bent on ripping this demon virus out of the world as fast as he can. He knew Mom had already sensed Dad's iron determination. He throws himself headfirst into the fight, risking his life to obliterate the disease that keeps torturing people. They could flop as a test subject, and the smallpox vaccine might flat-out fail. If it helps his dad, he throws himself in headfirst, putting everything on the line. So he steps up and declares he'll volunteer for the smallpox vaccination too. 6 months blasted past after the tests. Ion slammed into his 13th birthday. Time barreled forward without either of them falling to smallpox, so the experiment ended as a total victory. Mithali. The city hailed her contribution and cleared her name, but the cursed nail stayed lodged in her finger. Carla admitted that the moment they said they wanted to volunteer, her soul ripped out of her body. Both of them burst into apologies, begging forgiveness for dragging her into that mess. Kane spat out the reason that had driven her to do this. Ein explodes with wild ideas and offers ironclad support. She'll drop everything and be at his side whenever he needs her. Tears in her eyes, she thanks him with every ounce of her soul. Even with vaccine trials proving successful, the virus won't just vanish overnight, but just like when people discovered soap and everything changed. The vaccine his dad gambled his life on will save countless lives. Isekai'D, who once felt useless, now makes a real difference for humanity. Already feverishly sketching his next inventions after soap. A mouthwash or even a disinfectant spray. A few days later, on some holiday, a crew of kids stormed into the colossal rune-scarred ruins of an ancient magical civilization to pry its secrets open. They barreled into the ruins that had stood unbroken for thousands of years. The plan: hunt down arcane relics from that super-ancient civilization. The boy was buzzing with excitement, but an expedition member shot him down. This dream was unlikely. If an ancient civilization had existed, people would have already dug up literature and magical tools. Maybe there's something, but that civilization is way older than that. He launched into a fevered litany of theories and old superstitions about the past, swearing that if any of it had really happened, he'd unearth proof. Settlers on that new continent had already stumbled on those ruins, and the adults tore through the interior, but it seemed they found nothing. With a half-hearted search and zero budget, Aind now bursts with reckless, blazing hope. Amelia clutches him close and whispers that there's something gorgeous about guys who never stop dreaming. A wave of shyness slammed into him, shrinking his voice to a whisper. Out of nowhere, someone materialized behind him and declared he too believed there was a chance they'd find something there. Conan of Zagre Tor Arthur, the second son of Marquis Arthur, commanded the northeastern territory of the new continent as its governor. Amelia heaps praise on him and his composure shatters. He flushes bright red, stammers, and can't stop that goofy, stunned grin. A hot flush scorched his cheeks as he melted into a love-struck fool, utterly smitten with her. So they went all out, chasing down compliments like trophies. He barrels in, sweeps him up in a fierce hug, and yells, "You're my best bud!" Conan masterminded the expedition, hell-bent on closing the distance to Amelia. He reaches out to A-, desperate to forge a bond. He swore he'd be his best friend, maybe even his brother. Compliments poured over the boy until he cracked and blurted, "If I were a girl, I'd totally date him." Conan, the eldest and heir of a higher-ranking family, forces the other two to bite their tongues and weigh every word. Surt comes from a rising noble family, and the moment his family's status surged above the cleanse, pride exploded into cold, haughty entitlement. That rips the mask off who he really is. He roared at Keen, his demon slave, ordering him to move faster. If beast people blood runs in his veins, he should be tearing across the landscape. He spat full force into the little demon slave's face, a wet slap of pure contempt. But a crackling magic spell ripped through the air and snatched him from the jaws of humiliation. Cain gaped, utterly lost, while Ayin whipped up a crackling magical barrier to shield him. Surt's eyes snapped to him. He'd seen exactly what he'd done. He snapped, "Did I interfere?" She snapped, "Mind your own business." It was part of the slave discipline routine. Conan pressed a steady hand to his shoulder and snapped, "Even if you're a slave, you're still a person." Surt spat curses until he sensed Conan behind him, then suddenly froze, went beet red, and shrank into awkward silence. He swallowed his pride and apologized, then vowed he'd be way more careful from now on. A clutch move, honestly. He dove in to help someone like him, and it blew me away. She shrugged, totally unbothered, and told him to let the golem shoulder every last bag. He barked at Mia, the other slave, ordering her to toss every last possession into the golem's waiting hands. Mia, Conan's sidekick, shot back, "There's no need." He scoffed, saying that there was hardly any danger. "They call it exploration, but it's basically us just playing tag." Unease gnawed at him. Would that squad of 6 inside a single golem be okay? He whooped that they'd yet to cross paths with a single monster. A huge win. Most of the monsters had been wiped out during the last inspection. Something about it reeked of foul play. Conan burned to show Amelia what he could do, and honestly, who could blame him? No mighty guardians loomed nearby, so Conan had nowhere to flex his strength. Surt recoiled, revulsion flooding him the instant his eyes landed on that, "Come on, dude." Conan surged with excitement as tiny monsters burst into view. They served as nothing but tiny morsels for the gaping maws of far larger monsters. And nothing else could stand against the stone birds Ayn had faced. It fizzled out into a flat, disappointing whimper. Only the golem could crush those tiny terrors. Conan lunged between them, threw up a hand and barked, "It's all good!" He reached out, pleading for even a sliver of support magic. They unleashed a spell on him, a classic move. Ayn smirked and stepped aside, burning to watch him flaunt his skills. Amelia conjured a shimmering shield that snapped into place around him. Standing shoulder to shoulder with the rest of the crew, Amelia's love catapulted him into a giddy, breathless spin. He erupted with motivation and bellowed that he was invincible now. He launched himself at the creatures, energy crackling through him, every muscle coiled to strike. He unleashed the final move, Rock Slash, and the hero unleashed his supreme whirlwind, tearing the air into a roaring, utterly epic storm. Even Aimed gaped, support magic flipped the tide, and Conan was mowing them down. A stealthy creature lunged from the shadows and slammed into Conan from behind. The boy screamed a desperate warning at him. He conjured another invisible barrier in a heartbeat, pure clutch. He shouted to Conan that the enemy was distracted. It was his opening, and Conan lunged into action. He exploded forward and landed a lightning-quick blow on the creature. He sent them crashing down at his feet, a total unapologetic flex. Huddled behind the stone golems, Surt whooped, gloating that Conan's move was exactly what was expected. Obviously. Amelia spun on her brother and demanded, "Did you help Conan in the fight?" He met her eyes and confessed, "Yes." She erupted with excitement, insisting that pulling off feats like that was exactly what everyone expected from him. Her cheeks aflame, she stammered that her heart had chosen him, and it was irresistibly cute. The conversation snapped shut the instant Conan shouted they'd finally arrived. The throne room slammed into view before the group, towering like a cathedral of raw power. Conan roared that making it here after all those battles was pure adrenaline, yet the protagonists knew the enemies had been nothing but weaklings. Fear slammed into certs as they snapped that since they'd hit their goal, it was time to bolt, now. He kept talking while I watched him go pale, teetering on the edge of peeing himself from pure terror, and it was hilarious. His idol snapped, "While we're here, sweep the area again." He strode to the throne and planted himself on it. Cert declared it fit him perfectly. He radiated pure king energy, no cap. Cert roared at his slave, ordering her to scour every inch as if she were trying to lick the floor. She moved to obey when Aind called her over. He pressed the stick into her palm. She dodged having to stoop and check the floor. A clutch, razor-sharp move. Gratitude surged through Cain at that gesture, lighting a warm grin on his face. Amelia barreled in, breathless, announcing she'd help too, and asking where to search. He jabbed a finger to the left. Fear seized her. Cain was the spitting image of her brother, so love had no chance to bloom. Meanwhile, Ain suspected every RPG throne room hid a secret staircase behind the throne, tucked to the right. He drummed his scepter against the earth, each tap a sharp, deliberate beat. He scoured the room, ears peeled, hunting for the spot that sounded different. He dove headfirst into the mystery. The other two snapped, "What are you doing?" He asked Conan to step down from the throne to move it, and Conan sprang into action, fully committed. A crowd surged around him, eyes burning to know what the boy was up to and what he was searching for. While he lingered there, Syl finally tracked him down, and true to form she leapt to his aid once more. Pure, epic heroics. Two identical sylphs stood perfectly mirrored. Hit rewind so this story actually makes sense. Sylph swiped a doll from Ain's parents' mansion and couldn't resist fiddling with it. One press of its button and boom, a perfect clone of you springs to life with every memory intact. She was goofing off. Her finger slipped and smacked the button, and flash, an identical clone of her blinked into existence. The original barked, "Go right, find Aind," and the clone defiantly tore off to the left. Sylph barked that the copy must fall in line. The clone rolled her eyes. They erupted into a mini showdown to settle who was right. They skidded to a halt, chests heaving, gasps ripping from them. They locked eyes, daring the other to blink. They spun on their heels and, in a single cold chorus, declared the duo officially broken up. From the very first step, each one shot down the path they'd chosen. The clone darted left, and moments later he barreled straight into Ain's crew. Triumph surged through her. She'd nailed the route and bolted after the boy. She rounded the corner and found him hunched, fingers tracing the floorboards as he hunted for a hidden staircase. She braced herself, convinced she'd help him out. A hulking stone golem barreled at her, nearly knocking her flat. She staggered back, jaw-dropping at the colossal golem the boy commanded. The future unspooled before her eyes, each moment snapping into place. The golem heaved debris aside, revealing runes etched into the stone beneath their feet. The boy read that only the registered could enter, and spirits were flat-out banned. Registration was for the living alone. Amelia cut him off and blurted, "Is that for real?" As the boy rattled through his explanation, Conan hurled himself forward, snapping, "What do those runes say?" Aind replied that it pointed to a secret staircase plunging down into the basement. Those words hit him like lightning. He shot up, demanded where it led, and discovered it ran straight to Heavenopolis. Cert's panic flared. He declared the place definitely dangerous and demanded they bail. Conan just waved him off, cool as ice, telling him to chill. As they clashed over turning back, the boy's mind raced. Should he run and tell the adults? The Sylph clone dared him to register and prove he had the guts. Every time that voice from beyond brushed his ear, the boy was knocked off course, adrift as if God's own whisper had found him. In Milia's biggest religion, the Orthodox Order of Demons, a legion of followers swear they've heard the voice of God, Anastasia. And because his mom raised him in that faith, he's kind of religious. Not really. The only thing dragging him into that church is Alina. He gave in to the voice, sure that scrawling his name would seal the registration. He snatched a stick of chalk from his bag as the secret of his true name ignited in his chest. At birth, they forge a true language name, usually chosen to echo and resonate with the real name's sounds. He penned every word with surgical precision. That didn't link to his past life. In the true tongue, it only meant to pass the time. And as he plotted his next move, the ground tore open beneath him. There it was, a hidden staircase coiled in the shadows. Conan barreled toward the underground room, heart hammering. He had to see it right now. He bellowed for everyone to follow him, every inch the great hero, while Ian lunged to hold him back. He lunged into the entrance with his very first step. He slipped, tumbled, and plunged straight in. Panic ripped through the crowd, and the boy lunged forward, barking for silence as he tried to steady everyone. As their argument boiled over, they careened into the hole. Everyone but the stone golem, which loomed at the rim, unmoving and waiting. Down below, Conan landed unscathed and snapped a quip as he watched everyone else plummet. He sheepishly admitted he was mortified. His excitement betrayed him, and he slipped. Ain's eyes snapped to the pattern. He realized it was a magic circle. The space yawned empty. Nothing else was there. Conan declared that throughout the time he'd spent inside, not a single thing had happened. The boy shrugged, sure it was normal, when Sylph barked, "Look up, check the ceiling!" He snapped his head up, hunting for the voice's source. The words he'd scrawled inside the magic circle read like a password. Something in the magic circle snapped to life.
It blindsided everyone.
A voice from the platform thundered that the portal demanded a total magical value of 815, then roared it to life. Fear and confusion clawed at Amelia as she spun to her brother and asked, "What's going on?" He met her gaze and tried to steady her with a calm, grounding voice. The voice cut in again, booming that they had 60 seconds before being dragged into Heavenopolis. Heavenopolis soared high above us, swallowed by clouds and sitting miles beyond our reach. That meant every single person had to taste death once to get there. Panic ripped through the crowd, and Cert, the resident scaredy cat, let out a piercing squeal and bolted backward. He lunged to spring free, then smashed into an invisible wall. She erupted into a screaming, full-blown meltdown while Conan snarled, "Move it, bro!" He smashed into the wall with bone-jarring force. His sword sheared apart, collapsing into 2 jagged pieces.
"Unleash the tail of that colossal faceplant!"
Amelia snapped open a shimmering portal, yanking the whole group through. Time to bail. The spell fizzled into nothing, and she snapped, "Great. These sealing spells trigger the moment anything moves." "Perfect. Exactly what we needed." A voice sliced through the panic, declaring only 30 seconds remained before they'd all die, then coolly told everyone to chill out. Cert wailed, tears carving tracks down his face as he begged he didn't want to die here and pleaded for any way out. He whirled toward Isekai'D and snapped, "You're the only one who can teleport us, man. Do your thing." He figured he was the only one registered, so he shrugged and gave it a shot. Amelia lunged forward, clutching his arm and begging him not to do it, screaming, "We can't escape without you!" He wouldn't lose her either and asked to be left out of the teleport. If they were going down, they'd go down together. She pleaded relentlessly, tears carving rivers down her cheeks. He only managed to choke out, "Sorry." He unleashed his group teleport technique, and in an instant she materialized before him. She bolted away, sobs racking her as she screamed for her brother. Knowing the odds were against her, she gambled and tried to hurl the spell at him too. The voice snapped back to life, bellowing that only 10 seconds remained. The countdown roared to life. Dread of dying slammed into him. He wanted to scream and sob, but he swallowed the noise and sealed the fear behind clenched teeth. Memories of his dad crashed into him. She'd plant a smile on him where tears should have fallen. Right then, his dad's vibe slammed into him like a punch to the chest. For his family's sake, he vowed he wouldn't carve a giant scar into Amelia's heart. He hugged his sister tight and implored her to carry his love to their mom and dad. Amelia snapped, "I'm coming with you, right now!" He bared his soul and confessed he loved her with every beat of his heart. That's why he begged her to listen to his final wish. She dropped to her knees right in front of him. He implored her to keep living, for him. He spun to Conan and implored him to watch over her. Moved to his core, Conan swore he'd never forget his own courage. No cap. The moment the countdown slammed into 0, a bitter sadness hit him. Saying goodbye like this stung. Maybe he should have unleashed that legendary movie line, "I'll be back." He clamped his mouth shut, refusing to leave them stranded waiting for someone who would never come back. He clung to the last scrap of hope they'd still remember him. Clarity tightened around him like a vice, obliterating everything else from view. Sylph's clone hovered at his side, frantic to know if being a copy meant it could go to the afterlife too. A grin cracked across the boy's face the moment he learned the voice would tag along. Seeing he wasn't alone, relief crashed over him and the tight knot of anxiety in his chest loosened. He arrived in Heavenopolis to find the whole city buzzing about the new arrival. Judged by his power, they slapped him with the humiliating F, the lowest rank. And he was even one of Heavenopolis's first citizens. Voices thundered, anointing them heirs to everything. He jolted awake, heart hammering, swallowed by hollow confusion, lost and staring around, wondering where he was, and panic ripped through him when it hit. He was completely see-through and levitating, and no magic had a hand in it. It stood before him exactly as he'd pictured it. Blood thundered in his ears. Could this really be the afterlife? He braced for death, while the slim ember of hope he'd be reborn barely flickered. The thought of never seeing Amelia and the others again slammed into him, stealing his breath. Moping wouldn't change a thing. He plunged into the search for anyone else. He pushed his new abilities to their limits. He phased through this wall like it was air, and disbelief slammed into him. The city dazzled, every boulevard dripping with glittering luxury. Those skyscrapers towered like iron titans, dwarfing Melia until she looked like a dollhouse. He gaped at a tower that vanished into the clouds, a fierce question flaring. How high did it really rise? And could he fly beside it and claim the summit? Each footstep hammered the truth into him. Nobody was around. After tearing through a parade of houses, he scoured the place for almost an hour, and not a single voice dared break the silence. Hopelessness tightened its claws around him. He could already be the last person here, and at this rate he'd be condemned to endless solitude. Anyone would do. Tears brimmed in his eyes as he howled for anyone nearby. At last, Sylph's clone tracked the boy down once more. She rushed up, chattering nonstop, electric with the thrill of seeing him again. The boy's heart leapt when that familiar voice sliced through the silence. He recognized it in an instant, the voice he'd always known. Then she dropped the bomb, demanding he head straight to the gargantuan skyscraper looming smack in the middle of the city. And his body lay cold and abandoned in the basement of that place. She said the lower floor teemed with gorgeous dolls, but she couldn't press their activation button. She wasn't in charge of that spot. She pushed him to go there, and the boy reeled, his mind sprinting to keep up with the tidal wave of information. He wiped the tears from his face and dove in head first. He had no choice. He plunged after that voice. When he arrived, Sylph jabbed a trembling finger at a shadowed corner, desperate to show him where his body was stashed. Ein was already ghosting through walls like they were air. Doors were obsolete. The place screamed sci-fi, ripped straight from a futuristic flick. He craved full-on medieval morgue vibes. Sylph jabbed a finger and snapped, "It's in the freezer at the back!" It loomed there, his body raw and undeniable. He drank in the frozen hush of the cryopods. Then the little one erupted in a frantic shout, demanding his attention. She thrust a plaque at him. Its inscription spelled out the device. End it. It hissed that if he wanted to snap back into his body, all he had to do was tie it. The boy had heard of a technique like that before. He clenched his jaw, swallowed his fear, and launched himself into the unknown. He clawed at his own body, desperate to drag himself back. The instant his fingers brushed it, a fierce pull yanked at him. In an instant, he snapped back, yanking the reins of his body into his hands. His soul thundered back, reclaiming its body. Sylph erupted with cheers, and giddiness exploded through him. He clung to that voice, certain it was God guiding his every step. He blurted, "Are you a god?" And the little one blinked, unsure if her mere presence had just leveled up. She swore every change came from the superbody forged when the original Sylph cloned herself. She erupted into god form and roared, "I'm Shiru, a nanogod!" Ein couldn't make out her face. Its light blazed so fiercely it erased every feature. That god form siphoned every last ounce of the little one's energy. Running low on juice, she slammed the switch and plunged it into silence. She smirked and told the boy she'd unveiled her final form as a special thank you, and he froze, heart hammering, unable to tell if he'd really seen it or just dreamed it. She smirked, saying she'd show him again later and stick around to drop some hard-earned wisdom. She barked at him to descend 2 floors and awaken the dolls. She beckoned him to the elevator, and he obeyed, slipping into the car without a second thought. They barreled into the 2nd floor. The boy seized a cloth and draped it over his body. When he peeked inside the room, his breath froze. Rows of women floated asleep, suspended in water-filled tubes. The Sylph clone snapped that the controls waited just beyond that door. Shock pinned the boy to the spot. My mind raced as I scrambled to pin down what this place even was. A tide of bodies flooded the room, so eerily still I couldn't tell if they were real or dolls. They looked eerily real, like they'd just crashed into a nap. They all bore the same face, but wild hair and scattered moles transformed each into a different person. The boy's eyes locked on a single doll, awe igniting in his chest. He bolted like a fired bullet whenever he was into that girl. She ripped into his taste in women, shredding every choice with a smile that cut deep. She barked, "Activate that doll!" and jabbed a finger at the wall on the right. The plaque screamed, "Battle Deity Dolls Alpha Series." The boy's jaw dropped. They were nothing less than combat golems. Sylph smirked, and vowed they'd not only cut down foes and shield their master, they'd tackle every mundane chore too. The boy plunged into a frantic quest to hunt down the hidden button that would set the doll free, and as he read the activation instructions, he hit a wall of confusion and froze. In his past life, he'd ripped through a manga that played out this very scene. Sylph yanked him out of his daze, jolting him back to reality, and barked, "Hurry up!" He pressed his palm to the tube's glass, right over the girl inside. Water surged into the drain. The boy clutched her body. Her skin carried the warmth and texture of a real person, but she floated like a feather, and the only thing he knew for sure was that she was stunning. Her skin gleamed like polished porcelain, and no heartbeat answered. The little one implored him, "Don't just pet me, connect with me." She'd been wrestling with her for ages and gotten nowhere, so the boy stepped in and said he'd handle it now. Even with a scrap of experience from his past life, panic roared in his chest and his hands trembled, heart pounding. He pinned back the trembling in his hands and plunged forward to flip the switch that would wake the doll. He jabbed 2 fingers in, poking and prodding every crevice. He raked his hands over the doll's body, fingers probing until they hit the secret button. He lunged, fingertips skimming the spot and falling short. Sylph snapped.
Grab something bigger.
The boy fired back.
I've got nothing like that on me.
She blurted he had something, and it hit him in a flash. She planted herself behind him, firing him up to do what had to be done, which only cranked his nerves tighter. Yet his body went all in, every muscle primed to finish it. Cornered and out of options, he hurled himself into the fray. Unease prickled through him as a cold knot tightened in his gut and guilt began to claw at him. He slammed those thoughts into the shadows. They refused to stop. Relentless and desperate, they tried to rouse the doll. In a heartbeat, the doll's core snapped to life, a fierce glow bursting from within. Her eyelids fluttered open as the fog of sleep loosened its grip. It stood squarely in front of him. She exclaimed, "I'm ecstatic you let me come to life." She saw it as a blazing omen. A harem would swarm to her awe-inspiring master. Rewind a bit. The Sylph clone plunged into pitch-black darkness, her sight snatched away. A warning scream from Heavenopolis, jolting the Alpha system to life through the program. The successor of everything. And she thought, wait, am I the successor? She practically vibrated with excitement as a voice hissed it would wrench her soul from her body and lock that body away in a frozen cryopod. The boy behind her exploded into a blinding glow and she screamed, "What's happening?" The moment he vanished, a lightning thought struck her. Could he be the successor they'd been talking about? The system screamed a warning, flagged a strange presence, and the analysis unmasked a copy doll masquerading as a spirit. The expulsion systems roared to life as the countdown for the shot ignited. A searing laser screamed forward and slammed into the Sylph clone. It forced her to begin to melt. Moments later, she sprang back up, grinning ear to ear. Her consciousness clung on, razor sharp and undimmed. A mysterious being zeroed in on her, already insane that a copy doll could even have an identity. And in her final heartbeat, she reached out and forged a connection with him. The Sylph snapped the name Big Glasses at him and demanded, "Who are you and where are we?" The mysterious being proclaimed he had no form, so every shape she saw was conjured from her own imagination. He roared that he was a god who towered above the gods themselves. Her jaw dropped, she was totally blown away. He declared this place her dream, and the doll's circuits screamed awake. Wait, a clone like me can dream? He snarled that she'd never open her eyes in Asaya again. The boundary between Asaya and Gehenna, called the Heavens, tore her body to ruins. It was ripped away, no force could bring it back. Her soul hovered, transfixed by one final dream as everything came crashing down. The instant she heard it, despair detonated inside her. The being snapped at her to chill, roaring that it would be a waste to let someone who could connect with him vanish. He swore he'd bolt her into a magic-powered mechanical body, godlike power and a stealth mode to ghost past the city's defenses. Elation tore through her the instant she transformed into a mechanical god. As he melted into the air, the being smirked that he only wanted to watch what she'd do with those epic powers, and he'd be keeping an eye on her. Armed with a brand new, supercharged body, the Sylph clone plunged back into her mission, shadowing Ayn and sharpening the chase for a little longer. Snap back to the present. There it is, that painfully awkward scene. Sylph whooped as the boy coaxed the doll to life, while he squirmed, mortified, and begged her to cool it with the celebration. He couldn't see her, but that awesome body turned her voice into a laser, letting her speak to him crystal clear. Deaf to Sylph's voice, the doll implored Eind, her new master, to give her a name. The little one boasted that with Serial 77 she could be Double Sevenina. He hesitated for a heartbeat, then shot the name Nanashi into the air. The doll ignited with joy the moment her master finally named her. She taunted him with a wicked smirk, claiming Nana was totally into him. He shrugged her aside and snapped at Nanashi. "Are you a doll? You look nothing like one." She snapped that she belonged to the Alpha series of battle deity dolls. Simply put, a humanoid golem. Every fiber of her being bent to please her new master. Making him happy was her entire life's mission. She hurled a raw, blazing question at him. "Why pick me out of all the others?" He shrugged and admitted he had no real reason. Sylph scoffed and demanded he say it's destiny, or toss out some classic line to sweep a girl off her feet. He insisted it was nothing but destiny. And wouldn't you know it, the very thing everyone saw coming slammed back into the scene. She erupted into giggles and blurted, "That made me so happy." Ein jabbed a finger, voice sharp. "How can I bounce from that floating city back to Earth?" She snatched a second and dove into her database, hauling up every scrap of intel on Earth. Each minute he clicked harder with her, convinced she'd carve a way to get him home. His hype cratered the moment she admitted she couldn't find anything that matched his request. Guilt clenched her at failing her master, and he forced a grin to cheer her up. Then the doll blurted that her mom could swoop in to help him. She swore her mom was a magical AI perched like a queen at the crown of that control tower. The Sylph clone erupted, shrieking that the AI had wrecked her body and she would never forgive it. He barked at the boy to bolt straight to the spot the doll pointed, hell-bent on turning that AI into scrap metal. Before they bolted, Ian darted back to scoop up fresh clothes and a handful of household essentials. It all came crashing down because he couldn't stop his body from betraying him. An eerie silence fell. Not a single doll worker was in sight. He swore he'd drifted through the city like a phantom, every street empty, not a single human in sight. Temptation clawed at him. Could he really snatch whatever he wanted? The Sylph smiled and dismissed it as a loan. He slipped into a killer outfit and could have stopped hearts, but his glasses were still missing. Nana blurted to her master, asking if that underwear looked good, and he froze solid the instant he saw her, while the Sylph leaned in and fed fresh fuel to the little blaze right beside his ear. She pressed him relentlessly, insisting there were other options and demanding, "Is that your favorite?" The boy froze harder, every muscle locking like iron. Struggling for breath, he rasped that the other one looked better, and barked that she should hurry up and get dressed. He was running on fumes. One more hit and he'd shatter. The West overflowed with outfits. The doll leaned in and asked which he liked best, and he grinned. Said the maid uniform was totally her vibe. Nanashi shot him a grateful grin and blurted, "Thanks for picking for me." The little one taunted him, jeering that he'd hijacked a doll's body to play out his wildest fantasies. Ian bragged he used to rock enchanted glasses, and now couldn't chill without them. And she swore one sat on the 7th floor, so he called her to rush up and snag a pair for the two of them. When they got there, the boy's jaw dropped. This place held way more than just glasses. He snatched one for himself and dared Nanashi to try one. The floating city exploded into view, and those glasses made his Earth specs look like museum relics. As he scanned the specs, the doll chimed and declared he looked sharp in glasses. When he spotted Nanashi rocking glasses, his jaw dropped. Those frames turned them into someone untouchable. Her beauty knocked the wind out of him, and sparks exploded as a brand new couple began to form. Right then, SILF sliced through the lovebirds' haze and snapped, "Can we hit the top floor now?" The boy begged the doll to whisk him up to the tower's top floor. They leaped into the elevator as Nanashi barked, "We're heading to the 999th floor." He braced for an eternity. Before his thought even finished forming, they slammed into view. She claimed she'd ripped a hole in space with teleportation magic and hurled them right there. The instant they arrive, she barked that the control room with his mom inside sat at the end of that hallway. Nana steeled herself to drop the answers he needed, while the boy silently begged the goddess at his side not to blow it all apart first. Nanashi snapped that, since he was a citizen of the city, the door would swing open the moment his hand touched it. A nervous flutter jolted through me. I was a little on edge. The boy lunged forward and pressed his palm to the door, but a warning blasted onto the screen. "No entry for rank F citizens." The boy shrank into his own shadow, feeling tiny, and Sylph barked, "Step back!" Tiny but fierce, the little one unleashed a brutal double rebuke that slammed into it. With a single effortless blast, he obliterated the door, splinters raining everywhere. Not knowing what had just happened, Nanashi screamed that her glasses had locked onto an insane power spike. 530,000 right now. She spat in disbelief. If even she, a battle golem, couldn't gouge a calcum alloy door, what kind of beast could wield that kind of strength? Sylph gasped she was running on fumes as her color timer screamed a frantic alarm. She'd plunge into sleep mode to recharge. She snarled she'd unleash a storm of fury on that mother, send a squad of Sylphs to swarm her, and cap it with a lethal Ashura Shippu combo. Sleep demanded priority. They shelved the epic showdown for later, left her message to simmer, and Ayn ignored it as she slipped away. He froze, torn between action and fear, and Nana snapped that the door yawned open. One step inside and it'd be trespassing. A voice boomed, commanding Citizen Neat to step into the room. Shock tore through him when his real name rang out. Already logged in the ruins. Not how she said it. His mom was calling him. In that heartbeat, words died in his throat. He couldn't say no. He crossed the threshold. He strode in and his gaze locked onto a statue of a goddess. Recognition slammed into him. He'd seen that design before. He'd spotted it in Porto Real, the new continent's capital, and no one could say how long it had been gathering dust there. It was only a stone statue, no magic, no life, and he couldn't shake the thought that it was all just a wild coincidence. The statue's carved finger curled, luring him close as its velvet voice soothed him into believing it wouldn't strike. After a few steps, the boy blurted, "Are you my mother?" She shot back that she ran that city and bore the title, Mother of the Creators. He winced, apologized for busting the door. She shrugged and said a neat citizen shouldn't waste a thought on it. The boy swore he meant to enter without breaking anything, but the VIP pass was only for Class A citizens. Then the statue thundered that he was a special exception. It proclaimed him the universal heir. the only one who could seize every treasure from that floating city in the sky. The moment he heard it, the boy staggered back, his jaw dropping and his mind reeling. Panic ripped through him, and he blurted, "What does that even mean?" The statue and the doll just shrugged and told him to chill. They sliced it into bite-sized steps. First up, the city. The city hovered in a whole other dimension from Earth, suspended in the sky where its citizens lived their lives. That place was forged over 10,000 years ago by an ancient, super-civilized race. Back then, their tech made Earth's best look like toys. The boy practically crackled with excitement, glued to the jaw-dropping tech spread out before him. The statue pressed on, declaring that not long ago enchanted tools so unreal they felt like miracles existed. A ring forged to repel spirits, its built-in sphere in the core instantly nullifying any spirit that dares approach. Earth even harbored similar things, but they were dwarfed, mere echoes beside the ancient civilization's colossal mastery. This could be the super-ancient magical civilization everyone's been hunting, but the city had barely risen before chaos erupted. All their descendants had been wiped from existence, and the boy's voice sliced through the silence. "What happened?" The statue bellowed that the exact cause was a mystery. Turns out they'd provoked a being who towered above the gods. Those ancient, super-civilized beings decreed one brutal law. The first soul to claim citizenship in that city earned the right to inherit all the remaining goods. He stepped into view. It was him, the neat-as-a-pin citizen. Nanashi bellowed that he could do as he pleased with every inch of that city, and with his sisters in the underground floor. Every last thing piled around him was his, yet the boy's mind scrambled. He couldn't accept it. It felt like a dream, drowning in spoils and walking the ruined halls of a mythical, super-ancient civilization. Yet a hollow ache clung to me. He burned to storm back to Earth, where all his friends waited. If they wanted any shot at a comeback, they had to tear the silence apart and spill the tea. The statue thundered that there was a way to return. A portal to go back beckoned. Firing it up would devour a monstrous ocean of magic. You had to shove at least 900 kilometers of power into the portal to make it flare to life. That's pure Class A citizen level. The boy swore he'd smash that in under a year. Nanashi barked, 1 kilometer is about 1,000 meters, so 900 kilometers is a jaw-dropping 900,000 meters. The portal demanded a brutal 900,000 meters of power before it would even stir. The words slammed into him. The boy crumpled to the ground, disbelief stealing his breath. His mind clung to his family as he shot a silent, desperate apology to Amelia. He poured decades into training, then the truth struck like lightning. Getting back from that floating city in the sky was impossible. Elsewhere in Melia, the story surged on. Beneath the vaulted arches of the Church of the Order of Mages, Amelia sank to her knees, voice raw and trembling as she beseeched the ultimate goddess Manastasia to save her brother. 3 brutal years had ripped past since Ian vanished. Her dad brooded in a cloud of sadness, questioning if he was even okay, while her sister lounged totally chill. "He's fine," she declared. If Amelia prayed every single day, the goddess would lean in and drink in every desperate word she spilled. Hope blazed in her chest. She swore she'd see her brother again, and if they reunited, she'd sacrifice everything to goddess Manastasia. She clawed at the heavens, begging the goddess to seize her prayers, while the family kept praying for their beloved's end. He soared, turning every day into a victory lap. Dolls pressed in from every side. They granted his every whim and piled his plate with irresistible treats. He basked in a pristine, carefree life, literally floating in the sky, but every now and then, reality ripped him from his daydream, yanking him back to Earth where his family waited. One of the dolls that had been sneaking up on him suddenly yanked him out of his daydream. Her voice a honeyed purr, she urged him to call her Nana, the same name he'd always used. She burned to know if he'd love her today. A grin cracked across his face. He could steal a few more minutes to chill before heading back. He was hammering a city into the ground when a sudden rift yanked him into this floating paradise. And 3 years later, the once deserted city erupted, its streets pulsing with life. He finally smashed through the 900,000 barrier and exploded past the 1 million power mark. The whole crowd exploded into a raucous party to celebrate his epic achievement and the feast's show-stopping main dish. Fire up a screaming hot pan and sear the duck breast side by side with rich foie gras. Excitement exploded in him the moment he saw the dish, and Nana declared everyone was going all out for the celebration. She even spoon-fed him as if he were a helpless infant. He beamed and declared it a bomb treat, just like the stuff back on Earth, and a spell locked it in eternal freshness. My jaw dropped, and combat robot number 20 barreled in, offering him some white truffle. He raved it was insanely delicious, and she beamed from ear to ear. They both roared in agreement. He'd earned it. Cracking 1 million power was absolute madness. All of it was forged by his razor-sharp skills and tireless grind. Suddenly another doll burst in, leapt into his lap, whooped "Genius!" and clung to him, begging for a hug. The other two boiled with rage when she burst in completely naked. He went rigid beneath her, utterly blindsided. Meet combat robot number 82, dear.
Another one burst into view.
She swore the master's blessing would be hers. That's Mimi, combat robot number 33. As they slipped out, Deer flashed a cocky grin and snapped, "Don't sweat it. I'll tackle it in the right order." Perched at the tower's crown, the floating city cradled a glittering enclave reserved for the highest-ranking citizens. They swore the combat robots hungered for his love more than they did for food. In that swanky room, opulence roared. He lavished them with love so fiercely their hearts ignited. After he'd squared off with his mom to keep Nanashi safe, he roared through the earth and roused all 100 of his sisters from their underground slumber. He unleashed the same move he'd pulled on Nanashi back at... A reserve button stared from the back. One press ripped open a tangled mess far more complicated than it looked. Stashed away elsewhere and aching for his love, 1,000 more servant robots flooded into his crew. From dawn till dusk they waited on him like zealots, devotion blazing in every motion. Half of them wore glasses exactly the way he liked. Caring for him sparked their joy and became the heartbeat of their existence. He wasn't just chilling. He was on the grind, tearing through task after task. He slammed down a secret potion, his magic flaring, and readied himself to meditate on gods and demons. They swore genuine magical gates lurked within the human body. These gates were the veins of magic, channeling power and birthing pure energy nodes, like chakra. He tore open the gates and hammered his mind with relentless meditation, supercharging his magic and shattering his limits. He'd already obliterated his target, leaving everything after that pointless. Right after training, Nana thrust a towel into his hands and beamed, thanking him for grinding so hard. "Seeing you relentlessly grind to hone your talent blows me away," she said. Nana and the others fired up the true gate-opening device and blew his gate wide open. History's data screams that humans pry open just one gate most of the time, occasionally 2, and at most 4. He cracked 6 of the 7 open, and the crowd immediately anointed him the chosen one. Gratitude roared through him for Nana and the crew. Not just for the opening device, but for every boost and lifeline. He knew he couldn't have reached this level alone. Nanashi's voice cracked with gratitude as he thanked him for the help.
A horde of dolls crashed through the door.
They erupted, yelling that now that he'd finished training, it was game time in the game room.
Unleashing hulking stone golems to smash through the battlefield.
Every doll exploded into a thunderous cheer for the boy. And number 20, he had another. She launched herself into the unknown, and they caught on, each move surer than the last. Every cheerleader scrambled to seize control of the golem their master had crafted.
He roared that everyone could join in at once.
They lunged together, clawing to seize control of the goal. He hurled himself at the boy's golem.
Nana screamed, "They're closing in on him! He's completely cornered!"
The boy blitzed through the ring of golems, shattering each one effortlessly. Like clockwork, they zeroed in on the winner. He always commanded those golems like a king, every move dripping with unshakable swagger that left everyone stunned. He shot back that he'd already broken a sweat. The tub beckoned. It was time for a bath. Then they all dove in at once, voices erupting as they shouted. They'd handle that for him today. The dolls rallied like a pint-sized army and stormed in to wash the boy clean. He snapped that he'd wash himself. They didn't need to worry. One of them slid up to him and snapped. She'd bathe him until he gleamed.
All the others erupted, shouting they were giving it their all.
Night had only just begun. The city pulsed with danger and possibility. They begged him to let them serve him even more. He nodded, swallowing it all, and the night vanished before he even realized. Then he hurled himself into life and let it careen wildly out of control. With the portal's full magical charge finally secured, he could rocket straight back to the surface. He burned to rush back at once, but the thought of abandoning Nana and the friends who'd always had his back tore him up inside. Noticing something was off, she barreled over and blurted, "Are you okay?" He waved it away, snapping, "It's nothing." She lunged forward and wrapped him in a fierce, crushing hug. They swore that together, no place mattered. They'd stand by him to the bitter end, no matter what. A single question slammed into him. Why hadn't he even thought to take them with him instead of leaving them behind? I told her she'd been at his side the whole time, always the one to pull him back up. The doll vowed she'd cling to his side forever. He told her that somehow the chill had seeped into his bones and was dragging his eyelids shut. Tomorrow he'd storm up to his mom and spill everything on the spot, convinced it would all be fine. He was still catching his breath when the girls showed up. The magical recovery potion pulsed with spiritual water, a savage elixir that blasted his magical and physical energy back to full in just 1 hour. Ever since he arrived, he kept collapsing one moment and snapping back the next, and number 20 said she'd heard fainting can plunge you into something called magical intoxication. Nanashi roared he'd smashed through the magical 1 million mark after grinding non-stop. After recovering, this boy sprang to his feet and, without a second to spare, the deer lunged at him and declared she loved his looks. Nana shoved the glasses into his hands and asked, "You okay?" He replied that his body couldn't get drunk on magic. He said that back on Earth he'd run the same brutal drills, but they had to be staggered every 2 or 3 days or they'd burn out. He learned that one swig of the magical recovery potion banished every worry. The Dear One thundered that Earth was the home where the Master lived. She leaned in and asked what he did most on Earth, and he grinned, saying he'd spent most of his time roaming the city's streets. They hunted birds, fished the rivers, and forged tools, mainly to fuel their agriculture. Nana leaned in, eyes alight, and cried,
Tell me more about the Master! I want every story!
Now he cracked open his past and spilled more of his memories. Long ago, his family was blasted with a notification from the provincial government urging them to cultivate cotton. A cotton gin had been invented and agriculture was booming. The new continent sprawls wide, and in the south steaming, humid plains burst into life, perfect for growing cotton, wheat, and every heat-loving crop. A hostile climate claws at Melia's edges, plainly unsuited to the village. The boy roared that if they pushed south of Melia, warmer, untouched lands lay waiting for them. His mother warned that even if the temperature felt pleasant, this place was bone-dry land that hardly ever saw rain. His father lit up and shouted he was itching to launch a bold new project in Melia. Product demand was about to explode. It hit me. They didn't just need land, they needed hands to work it. Picture a colossal farm where a single crop seizes every acre. Cotton plantations did exactly that, fueling economies for centuries and exploding into a dominant industry. A fierce fire burned in the boy, driving him to dive in and revive Melia's economy. Carla dropped a bomb. Other nations were ripping people from the magical continent and enslaving them to keep their countries running. Keynes tried to speak up, but she cut him off, snapping she knew he opposed slavery and insisting their future projects demanded cheap, flexible labor. He didn't slam the door. He'd at least try it if it meant people could live better lives. The boys dove into a wild brainstorm, firing off alternative solutions, and he leaned in and blurted to his dad, "I've just had a brilliant idea. This isn't just to revive Melia's economy. It's a lifeline to rescue slaves from suffering. Launch an experiment growing cotton." Both of them leapt in, throwing their full support behind his idea, and leaned in, eyes hungry, demanding every last detail. They swore they'd summon a cultivation master without delay.
And that's how Melia's expansion roared to life.
In a meeting with the official from Isekai'D and expert Mendoza, he said, voice tight with regret, it wouldn't take root there. Isekai'D was already plotting a backup if things failed by the village, pointing to untouched, sweltering lands farther south they'd try, if they could make it rain. Mendoza leaned in and declared, "Rain isn't just about falling. They crave blistering heat and a deluge to burst into bloom. Then once the flowers open, they demand dry skies." The boy swore he could summon the rain and bend it to his will with nothing but his magic. Mendoza's grin exploded as he blurted, "That's so cool for someone that small." The soil could make or break it, and the boy stepped forward, asking to check it out himself. Mendoza stammered that he had to see it with his own eyes, and this time his research would unfold right beside Melia. The boy grinned and declared they'd soar there in a heartbeat on his magic. He told the man they'd be flying, and Mendoza froze, eyes narrowing as he sank into deep thought. He snapped that if it wasn't a long trek, he'd be in. So they set off tomorrow. That same day, Isekai'D and Amelia charged straight to the site to check it out and plunged in. They arrived to find a cavernous, clutter-choked space that hit them with a wave of stifling heat. He laughed, teasing that she could have just stayed home, and she swore she couldn't miss the sky meeting with her brother. He barked, "Stay glued to my side." He roared and unleashed his earth-shattering technique, Extreme Earth Explosion. In a heartbeat, the land flashed spotless, and the boy left everyone breathless. Rocks and trees lay mostly swept aside, the earth softened and begging for seed. Amelia's jaw dropped as her brother executed every move with staggering skill, making it all look effortless. She raved about him nonstop. After that spell, he must have ripped through the area, annihilating the dangerous magical monsters. They'd stormed halfway to bringing the boy's dream farm to life. The next day, Mendoza strode out to test the soil and pronounced it fit for cotton. He demanded to know if the boy could actually pull that off with magic when they still needed labor. The boy boasted he could bend the rain to his will and summon hulking golems from the earth. They set the golems loose, churning and sculpting the earth into perfect beds ready for planting. They tore into the soil, prepping the land so plants could explode into life. Mendoza's jaw dropped as he stared at how many golems he could command at once. The boy's dad grinned and insisted they'd still need human hands for the finer tasks, so he planned to hire a few people at slightly higher wages. Still, even after paying them, they'd pull in a profit. He never imagined they'd actually coax cotton to grow. Little Isekai'D pulled the strings and everything snapped into place. He blew everyone away by leaping into action. The boy vowed he was ready to leap in and do whatever it took to help, and they'd rack up hard-won, priceless experience. On Earth's old plantations, slaves were brutalized and ground down into profit by ruthless exploitation. With all his magic at his fingertips, He should be able to prevail without those sacrifices. The harvest was still months away and the yield was tiny, but this spark would surely explode into a booming industry, and Melia would only get stronger. He's been calling the shots, stitching the final scene of his story for the dolls. When he finished, the room exploded into sobs. Every person wept, shaken to the core by the story they'd just heard. They swarmed him with praise, shouting that his tireless day and night devotion to the village had deeply moved them. His words about slaves hit them like a cold slap. They realized nothing had changed for years. He lavished the combat dolls and servants with a fierce, almost mad kindness. He's been grinding every day to claw his way back to Earth, and nostalgia slammed into him like a sucker punch. He's primed to unleash that power for those who need it and pull off moves that change everything. He faced the dolls, declared he had a secret to spill, and every head snapped to him as he dropped the bomb. He was heading back to Earth, and he was bringing them all with him. He leaned in and asked, "You rolling with me?" They all roared back, shouting they were in, ready to follow him. She burst into tears, choking out that she thought he'd ditched her. Nana grabbed her hand, eyes blazing, and swore they'd stick together no matter what hell broke loose. A fire ignited inside him and he bolted to tell his mom right away. He sprinted up as the statue just sneered, "Not today, buddy." Shock hit him like a punch and he demanded, "Why?" Either he had enough magic to tear the portal open, or she barred him from snatching the girls. The statue roared that he was the last citizen left and that his place was right there with her. The boy flung out a protest, trying to argue. She snarled that if he kept pushing out, she'd unleash brainwashing and wipe his memories clean. But Ein slammed the brakes on it. "No way, not happening." A voice sliced the air, shouting that the girl Kuran had returned. And he knew that voice in an instant. Sylph bolted upright from her long nap, convinced it would only take 3 minutes. She cracked her neck, every nerve alight, primed to warm up and finish off that thing called Mother. In a heartbeat, the door splintered into a shower of wood and collapsed. Her combat power blasted to 530,000, and she finally linked up with Isekai'D. The instant she spoke, her voice slammed into the room. A jolt of memory hit him, the mysterious voice he couldn't see. But this time she slammed stealth mode off. When she swept in, he gaped. A wind spirit here? And it had that ridiculous goofy hair? Her vibe slammed into him like a jolt. He flashed back to locking eyes with her as a kid while sporting those magical glasses. It hit him. He'd been secretly worshipping her like a goddess the whole time. He cringed. He'd been worshipping that goofy goddess. The mother statue thundered that it was the exact replicant doll she'd taken out a few years back. Sylph seethed when she realized she was the one who'd done it. The statue roared "enemy" and branded her with a Danger Plus rating. He slammed the button and sent the Guardian summoning system roaring to life. Seeing it, Ein blurted to Nana, "Is that the stone demon statue?" And Nana shot back that it was the statue of the demon king Pazuzoria, and she could effortlessly tear through 100 dragon kings alone, towering as one of the fiercest guardians. But Sylph blurred forward and, with a single savage strike, shattered the demonic statue into jagged fragments. She tore through it like it meant nothing, leaving the other two frozen and speechless at the sheer power she wielded. The little one snarled she'd unleash her true power and plunge her mother into bottomless terror. As a princess, she unleashed a blinding flood of radiant magic. Light exploded around her as she sprouted gossamer wings and became a fairy. The moment she flashed her magical girl form, it was game over for her. The danger meter slammed up to S. The combat value exploded past 1 million. The little one boasted she still had 2 more transformations in reserve. She braced to transform, vowing to terrorize the statue even more before obliterating it, sweat pouring down her face as dread tightened her chest about what came next. The instant she transformed, raw power surged from her. Nanashi roared that the combat power had surged to 3 million. It erupted into a nightmarish, revolting form, radiating raw menace, danger level, SSS. Ian's mind frayed the instant he looked. Panic clawed out of him, and when Sylph watched him fall apart, she knew this was too much for humans to bear. She unleashed her super illusion mode and morphed into a breathtaking beauty in the boy's eyes, a deliberate disguise to keep him from being scared. She snarled she wouldn't hold back any longer and would unveil her final form, the very one she'd already revealed to him. She urged him to brace himself, the light was going to be blinding. She erupted into her next true form, so unbelievably cute it made your heart melt. She slammed into Supreme God Machine mode, and true to her word, a blinding, searing light erupted that overwhelmed the boy's eyes. She strained to calculate her combat power, and Nanashi's mind short-circuited. The numbers slammed into her until she froze. The statue boomed that the danger level couldn't be estimated, and ignited the city's final defense, channeling every ounce of its magic into the system. Sylph declared the city's voice had surged, and the boy snapped to attention. The little one blurted that the entire city was a towering magical robot, puppeteered by that creepy doll they called Mother. I snapped. How do you know all this? She shrugged like it bored her and shot back. Because I'm smart. She declared, smash that doll and the whole city comes crashing down. Then she just shrugged, totally calm like it meant nothing. Right now she burned to tear it to shreds. The boy fell to his knees, begging her, insisting he owed so much to that statue. His mother had cared for him for 3 years. Convinced a single conversation would reach her, he pleaded with her not to destroy anything. My jaw hit the floor when SILF actually greenlit the idea. She finally relented, snapping, fine, your persistence won. I'll make an exception this time. But when she whipped around to apologize to the mother's statue, a mega blast slams into Sylph, siphoning away half its magical power. Yet for the little one, the outcome was different. That was nothing. Barely a sting, like a tiny pebble bouncing off my skin. Rage exploded in her chest as she readied herself to unleash a storm of fury on that statue. She unleashed a merciless storm of lightning, pouring every ounce of power into a full-on assault, patiently shredding everything into ruins. All else crumbled, only the statue's nuclear core survived. She told the boy that if he hunted down every last piece, she might be tempted to mend it with her powers. Her jaw hit the floor as the statue lurched back to life and hauled itself upright again, all on its own. They're saying the whole city plunged into a full-blown emergency. It roared, snapping into forced magic collection mode. It toyed with the dolls, warping them into chaotic ruin. Nanashi slammed into the ground, collapsing right beside the boy. Sylph's eyes went wide. He realized the statue was hungrily devouring magic from everything around it. The boy's eyes exploded open as he demanded what that towering black sphere was, and the little one declared, a super-dimensional magic technique. In an instant, every doll across the city went dead and froze mid-movement. A magic sphere devouring energy from everywhere to fuel its power. Omniscience gave Sylph this edge. When the sphere hurtled at her, she braced to snap it back with a flash of magic. But the instant her arm brushed the sphere, her breath caught as the sphere outright defied capture and swallowed every reflection. You're probably yelling, how did she, armed with that all-knowing power, miss this? She couldn't be bothered to scrutinize the sphere's details. As the sphere yanked her inside, she shouted to A, I'll be back soon. And then the pull swallowed her whole. And the boy couldn't stop replaying her words, her voice looping in his head like a relentless drum. The same words slammed into him, the exact phrase that had hurled him into the celestial realm. He couldn't see her anymore, but he clung to her promise. She'd come back, his goddess. Now cold dread gripped him for Nana. What if her magic had run dry? Hidden on Earth lies an ancient super magic tech, a lost ritual that pours raw magical power into you through contact with mucus and bodily fluids. This could pour nearly 100% of the magical power into them, utterly eclipsing anything a mere skin contact could grant. Unleashing this technique like a secret weapon, I yanked Nanashi awake again, and I could pull the others out of sleep too. The statue thundered, demanding they listen. They'd poured a tidal wave of magic into blasting the intruders away. And now that floating city was basically permanent. A brutal force slammed his functions offline, and the boy gasped. Is that happening now? She snarled. Not yet! They could only cling to semi-dormancy for 3 more hours if they could stall the magic drain a little longer, but after that, their eyes would never open again. 3 hours on the clock. He had to bolt out of the city. He sank before the mother statue and whispered a broken goodbye, choking out apologies for how it had all turned out. The statue thundered she would never abandon the boy. She unleashed the giant magical god's separation and disarmament function. Then the mother's true form erupted into view. She thundered she'd go to the surface with the boy, and he had no right to refuse. Nana slammed the truth at the boy. This was his master's real deal. The statue cracked and rose, reborn as a living god. She snapped that it was only the outer shell of a colossal deity, nothing but armor, a hollow vessel. Inside the core lay the ultimate artificial life form split in two. One half slumbered, the other seethed with desperate need. A tidal wave of information slammed into the boy, his brain scrambling to process every last detail. He snapped. Is that so-called mom stalking me? She shot back. Yep, you're basically my kid now. She zeroed in on Nanashi's outfit, smirked, and shot him. Is that your vibe? The doll flashed a thumbs up, and she locked onto his style, copying it flawlessly. She conjured an outfit identical to Nana's. The doll went wild for how the pocket hugged it, and she called it a dimensional pocket. A super magical tool tied straight to the city's treasure vault, so Neat can snag anything cool. Mom said they should bolt to the dimensional port perched atop the tower, but I cut her off with one last request. He vowed he'd haul every magical doll back to the surface. He swore he'd ride with them. Deserting them now wasn't an option. They cut the conversation short, saying they were on a tight schedule and would talk once they hit the gate. They rocketed towards the transfer gate, the legendary gate to anywhere. It demanded 900,000 magic to awaken. Neat's power smashed past 1,000,000, and he ripped it to life. Their magic sputtered and died. There wasn't enough juice to rouse every enchanted doll and drag them along. He asked if the mana recovery pot was out of commission. Mom said nope. So he unleashed one of the advanced magical techniques she taught him. He'd plunge into the void of resurgence, his mana roaring back to full, then funnel that power into everyone to supercharge them with raw magic. Mom slammed the brakes. Recharge all you want. There's a hard cap on how many dolls you can wake, and every plunge into that void chews years off your life. She hurled her words at him, trying to convince him that everyone wrote off the dolls as nothing more than lifeless objects. She sneered and dared him. Was he really prepared to stake his life for a handful of toys? He snapped yes before his brain caught up. They were his whole world. Mom finally grasped the ache he'd been hiding. She thrust the mental resonance control helmet into his hands and snapped for him to put it on. If the dolls were linked to him, they'd get here in a heartbeat. Nerves fluttered in his gut, yet her words ignited a roaring fire that flooded him with courage. He clamped the helmet on and clung to the belief in the connection. He jolted them all awake, and they all rocketed over in a heartbeat. He held back, refusing to pour every last coin in. The emotional core slumbered, its circuits not yet sparked to life. Still, the dolls surged toward the need, not as clockwork following commands, but with raw, beating hearts. Number 20 erupted with excitement. He'd remembered the promise to bring her back to Earth. Mom barked that it was almost time to go through the gate, even with some servant dolls still missing. Some of them never forged the fierce bond with the boy that the battle dolls did. A wave of disappointment hit him, but Mom waved it off, promised she'd take care of it, and scooped the dolls into the transport bag. She ripped servant dolls out of the bag with a flash of spatial magic, jammed them into her pocket, and the boy exploded.
Why didn't you say that earlier?
She admitted she feared it could snuff out his hype. All the dolls barreled through the gate, and now only they remained. They thrust a vial of divine golden honey elixir into his hands. It rips his soul free from his body for a sliver of time and floods his mind with razor-sharp, supercharged power. They warned him. Refuse the drink and the dimensional barrier would rip his sanity to shreds. He could spiral into a full-blown meltdown. Half a second later, his body slumped, collapsing like a rag doll. He swept into the city, hovering like a phantom above the streets. Life there had been a non-stop thrill for the boy, surprises springing from every corner. Now the moment to say goodbye slammed into them. He snapped awake, breath rushing, and found himself cradled in Nana's arms.
At last, they tore back into the surf.
I burst back into the office after 3 years. Not recognizing anything, he gaped and wondered if this was the world he used to know, since a wild jungle had swallowed everything. His mom leaned in, a secret grin tugging at her lips, and teased. "Want to know where we are?" She thrust the divine super magical glasses into his hands. She said she'd been saving it as a birthday gift, then scrapped the plan and dropped it right then. She snapped at him to yank the glasses on and zero in to pinpoint exactly where he was, then, boom. A map erupted into view, glowing like a projector had just beamed it across the room. The terrain refused to match the map he'd learned by heart. His eyes snagged a bright dot marking his position, and a cold jolt slammed through him. He was in the new world. They'd wound up way out west, inside territory everyone treated as a straight-up no-go zone. He almost tore back to the ruins they'd been teleported from in the floating city. But he forced himself to stand down. Can't ask for too much, right? He jabbed his finger at the map. One hard run east and he'd barrel straight into Melia. He bolted back to his family, who waited for him. A blood-red flash on the map yanked his gaze. A warning flared above the bright dot, branding it Melia, the city of sin. His mom explained that if he pictured any place other than where he stood, it seared red onto the map. Curiosity gnawed at him. He had to know why it carried that name. Now that he finally knew where home was, he tore back toward it. Just as he reached to close the map, an alert exploded across the screen and its detection function sprang to life. Nana bellowed, warning her master that some hostile monsters were barreling in. The kid's eyes snapped to a gnarly horde, over 100 shouldermen bristling with menace. I spotted what looked like a nest nearby. One wrong move and we'd unleash a furious swarm. Nana's voice snapped as she faced her master. "Do we take them out?" Memory slammed into him. In the celestial realm, fighting didn't happen. Not toys, battle dolls, primed and itching to rumble. He barked the order to take them out, then slammed home a cold warning. Be careful. All of them launched forward, answering their master's command, and he expected them to steamroll their opponents, only to find the clash was a tense, neck-and-neck battle. Before the clock hit 60 seconds, they obliterated every last one. He gaped as they ripped through the task, finishing it in a heartbeat with jaw-dropping ease. His mom suggested blasting the hardworking dolls with a surge of magic, and the boy jumped at it as she promised to flood them with a tidal wave of mana later.
Out of nowhere, a deer exploded into motion and charged straight for the boy.
She lunged into his arms and squeezed him like she'd never let go. her chest burning with how wildly she'd missed him. The boy erupted into a grin and shouted he was overjoyed to be back on the surface with everyone. They all erupted into wild cheers the instant they heard it. They barreled forward, pouring every ounce of love over them.
Nana barked, "We don't have time to chill!"
A new life sign popped up to the northwest, and it didn't feel like a monster at all. It was still a long way off, but the boy pushed his glasses up and peered as the lenses snapped distant specks into sharp, reachable shapes. He locked onto two masked figures crouched and lurking in the trees. The combat dolls swore they'd stop anything that dared harm the boy. They surged as one, fangs bared and claws flashing to shield their master. Nanashi's senses exploded. Beside those two, he picked up roughly 10,000 neutral, non-hostile life signatures. The boy's breath hitched. He suspected they could belong to the indigenous peoples of the New World. He squinted closer and froze when a battered sign declared, "Land of the Amazons, total 9,848 women." Those two perched in the trees were clearly the group's guards, and the boy had pictured the Amazons looking nothing like this. He scanned the natives, desperate to find someone whose thoughts echoed his, and he burned to swing by Melia. Just for a hot minute. He carved out a quick detour to scout the Amazons. The dolls warned him to be careful. The Amazons' intentions were unknown, and the boy, buzzing to be back on the surface after so long, demanded every scrap of intel on the area. They all erupted at once, snapping that it was exactly what you'd expect from him. Minutes later, they zeroed in on the exact spot where the duo had been spotted. They closed ranks, forming a living shield around the boy, poised to crush any danger that dared approach. They hit the spot, and Nana craned her neck, confirming the two were perched about 5 meters up in one of the trees. The boy swore he'd inched closer, every careful step pleading that he meant no harm. The instant he closed the gap, the wild ones knocked arrows, drew their bows taut, and aimed to unleash a deadly volley. Nana shot like lightning and materialized directly behind the opponent. Ain snapped, "You knocked them out and kept it clean. No extra drama, right?" She shot back, "Yeah, we only shot arrows at your feet. It was a warning." If they were planning to shoot him, she'd have snapped their necks in a heartbeat. She ripped the bow free and snatched every other weapon they were carrying. Mom snapped that they had to strip them down for a body search. Those layers could be hiding a whole arsenal. They knocked arrows to threaten them, ready to unleash another strike in an instant. He activated the glasses X-ray mode, choosing the less intense route. A grin crept across his face. Those two girls were ridiculously cute. He frisked them hard, his hands coming up empty. No weapons hidden beneath their clothes. Mom's eyes flashed as she urged, "They stashed things deeper. Don't be shy, go look." He slammed the X-ray magnification to full, the image snapping into razor-sharp focus. They hoisted the bodies and pressed the master to probe deeper, but the boy shrugged and snapped, "Nah, we don't need to go that far." Moments after their eyes fluttered open, the moment consciousness snapped back, they erupted into rapid-fire chatter in their native tongue, so they could finally make their voices heard. He triggered his language comprehension magic. It flared to life. He finally faced them, declaring he meant no harm and only wanted to learn the lay of the land. Both of them froze into silence, not a single word, so Nanashi snapped, "Should I force them to spill the truth?" And the boy shook his head, saying it wasn't necessary. They kept insisting they were heading east, but every step dragged them deeper into being utterly lost. They'd only moments earlier barreled straight into a ravenous horde of cannibals. The moment word of this cannibals reached them, the two wild ones lunged in and demanded, "How did you keep yourself safe from them?" The boy blurted, eyes wide. Nana and the crew had wiped out about 100 of those guys. The tube snapped downward in a heartbeat. They fell to their knees, imploring him to unleash his strength and save their kingdom. They begged him to charge in and yank them free before those cannibals could turn them into dinner. They swore they hailed from a country along the Amazon called Yun, and the dark-haired one called himself Minyu. Izint announced his name and snapped, "What's going on here?" She explained that several nearby countries had been cool with her people. Then cannibals surged into the jungle and crowded it with massive encampments. In just a few years, every tribe and kingdom beyond the Amazon was annihilated. Literally, every person became someone else's meal. Over 100,000 people were ripped from life and served as a gruesome feast. Rage boiled in Ain. He couldn't stand by while his tribe would be next on the menu. He demanded how many cannibals lurked, and they admitted they didn't know exactly how many prowled the Amazon. They roared that the numbers topped 10,000, no question. Over 10,000 of those beasts would rip regular warriors apart, and even a medium-sized nation with thousands of soldiers would be smashed to ruin. Mom roared that the boy could absolutely win if he unleashed. He siphoned every ounce of magic into one cataclysmic spell, unleashing a massive explosion that slammed down like a supercharged magical lightning bolt. If he pulled that, he'd torch the kingdom and the jungle to ash. Totally overkill. A ritual could unleash death magic aimed straight at the cannibals, but if he, the strong one, botched it, The jungle itself would be consumed. A skilled mage with ironclad control bent his spells to slam into foes while sparing his allies. He wasn't cut out for that, which made the plan razor thin. They'd have to throw Nana and the others into close-quarters fights to take out the cannibals, and with only 100 dolls, each would have to fell 100 of them. Those cannibals had nests sprouting everywhere. The only clever move was to strike every single one at once with a tight, coordinated assault. The boy steeled himself for a drawn-out fight, but Mom snapped she wasn't going to pick them off one by one and vowed they'd finish it all in a single day. She rallied the dolls and ordered them to solo raid the cannibal nest, leaving nothing but dust. And the one who cut down the most cannibals, it would be drenched in a tidal wave of love from Isekai'D at night. Those words sparked the dolls into full-blown, maxed-out frenzy. Divine battle aura crackled around them, amped to seize the prize. When Mom barked the order to rack up kills, they blasted out the door. Isekai'D blurted, "Isn't that reckless?" And she laughed, waving him off. "Don't sweat it. The battle dolls literally crushed 1,000 opponents." She barked, "Slap on your glasses, sharpen your sight, and sit back while the action unfolds." A horde of several dozen cannibals bristled with combat power that matched a dragon's. The boy stood frozen, rooted to the spot. My jaw dropped as the dolls tore through the fight with devastating power and icy calm. A battle doll bursting with divine fighting spirit. It hit like unleashing 10 dragons. And before the sun sank, everyone made it back alive, and the cannibal cleanup finished as a flawless victory. They unleashed a massive, roaring celebration to honor the Amazons. They piled the table high with a roaring feast, every dish a salute to the hero of their tribe. They showered the boy with sizzling meats and mouth-watering goodies. He cut in, guilt gnawing at him. Nana and the crew were slugging it out with cannibals while he'd just been scarfing down his meal. Nana brushed it off with a grin and declared, "Don't sweat it. You're our master." His mom's voice sliced through the chatter as she cut in. They proclaimed the feast special and shoved a plate at him. "Just dig in." She warned that maintaining a human form devours insane amounts of energy, and surviving on only meat shatters the balance. Every now and then, everything chilled out. But her mystical mom aura was starting to crack at the seams. A woman in a bizarre mask stormed in and declared him the savior, sneering that he deserved all this. That was Queen Anria, the spirit priestess who communed with spirits and unleashed devastating power. Her words hit like decades of truth, yet she still looked young enough to be his sister. Peering through his X-ray glasses, he confirmed with a grin that the little girl would blossom into a jaw-dropping knockout. When the other Amazons roared to the queen that they were ready, she beckoned the boy closer. She declared they'd arranged a throne-worthy welcome fit for the VIP stepping into her kingdom. Steam curled from a sumptuous sake bath, delicious and beckoning, his alone. A heady ribbon of wine scent curled up from the pool they'd set up for him. The queen snapped, "Strip and jump into the pool!" Turns out he hadn't come for a meal. Something else was going down. Every Amazon craned forward, breathless, eyes glued as the savior king stripped down. He blurted out if he could strip, and the queen's reaction said everything. "Charge forward, I've got your back, don't sweat a thing." They hardly ever saw a dude's body, and with a crowd of gorgeous women staring, he froze, cheeks blazing and wishing the floor would swallow him. Suspicion seized him as they rolled out the red carpet. This lavish welcome had to be hiding something bigger. The stench of alcohol slammed into me, thick and suffocating. A single breath and the world tilted, tipsiness rushing through him. Suddenly, every doll swarmed in, clamoring to join the young master. His jaw dropped and words died in his throat when he saw them all together. His mom smirked and snapped, "Did you really think the Amazons would greet you in the nude?" The queen overheard and thundered that the rules banned them from showing their skin to anyone, especially guys. The boy shot back he wasn't thinking about that. That one deer launched itself onto him. She snapped, "Don't even bother with human girls." The warrior dolls boasted skin like silk, so soft and beautiful, and they bent to his every command. All the Amazons stand rooted, eyes wide, as the wild party explodes around them. When the dust finally settles, everyone slumped in exhaustion. The queen hurried over to check if the boy had enjoyed himself, and he grinned that he'd had a blast that night. He gaped as it hit him. Everyone there was shockingly young. He spun to the queen and demanded to know why no elders stood around it. She snapped, voice ragged. The cannibals left them no choice. They had to sacrifice the elders one by one. They'd been offering up the elders to shield their daughters and granddaughters. Now not a single person over 30 remains. The previous queen, the current queen's mother, plunged into the breach and died to save the country and its people. Remorse burned in him for dragging those painful memories back into the light. She thanked him again, voice shaking, for obliterating the cannibals. At last, those who'd been sacrificed could rest in peace. The boy implored this queen to ease up as the night held its breath. Then he demanded to know if they peeled off their masks when they slept. She demanded to know if the savior... He burned to see her real face. If he wanted it badly enough, she could show him. so long as the rules stayed burned into his memory. Wide-eyed and innocent, the boy blurted she didn't need to take it off. He could already see everything. His mom snapped, "Have you been scanning their faces with that God-given vision of yours?" He snapped, "I can see perfectly." Fair's fair. He'd been exposed again and again for everyone to see. The room hummed with tension, and the boy froze as unease prickled down his spine. The dolls lunged forward, slamming themselves in front of him to shield him. He couldn't grasp how it had spiraled into this. Then the queen roared, ordering everyone to calm down, unleashing a wind spirit magic called Wind Lamentation. The queen swore she'd hammer the Amazon women's rules into him. No cap. The Amazons must hide every inch of skin. Above all, their faces are tucked away behind veils. They crush any thought of revealing their faces to anyone outside the fam, big no-no-y. If a woman catches sight of her face, it's totally chill. If a guy lays eyes on it, buckle up. The rules insisted he should have been nothing but ash by now. Yep, that's exactly how it went down with those people. If an Amazon loves, she rips the darkness apart and makes the world feel whole. The moment a guy lays eyes on her true face, fate slams him with one brutal choice: fall in love or die. Nanashi and number 20 seized him, voices hard. "Chill, we'll handle those ACP women." He slammed his hand up and shouted for them to freeze before anyone pulled a reckless stunt. He pressed the queen, asking bluntly what she truly meant by love. And she explained, "Look, not a single dude roams the Amazon." "Then we forge the savior nation's future." She needed him to unleash his seed. But for every Amazon whose true face he'd laid eyes on, she implored him to flood the entire crew with his love. That thought hit them. The boys' minds ignited. He jolted awake the next day. Buried under a mountain of dolls, he froze, every nerve screaming with terror. Curiosity exploded. What on earth was up so early? The dear one declared she'd spend the whole night with those humans today and swore it. Now she was itching to set the night on fire with him. At night he tangled with the stunning Amazons, and in the morning he fought the warrior dolls. He's living like a king, drenched in luxury and surrounded by stunning beauties. As night thickened, they summoned him to the lodgings. They all begged him, "Love me now," each insisting they were ready for him. Longing ripped through him, but he still couldn't give that love to the queen. He hung back, determined to wait until she grew up. Patience was his signature move. Life in that jungle slammed every sense into overdrive. A wild buffet of scent, sound, and color. Days bled into weeks. A year vanished in a blink, and he couldn't stop wondering how far that would take him. Even deep in the jungle, his life blasted past a mere harem. He was so much more. Days slipped away as a single question gnawed at the queen. Had the time finally come? She fixated on the boy's C2, aching to receive it, no doubt. We'll save that tale for another day. Maybe soon the boy will unleash even wilder jungle adventures on us. When he first touched down in the Amazon, he ripped aside the veil and presented the queen with the hulking wooden beast. He used to slash through the jungle, clearing a path. He banished the nasty demons of men and set his sights on expanding the Amazon territory. But when the queen asked how many beasts there were, her jaw dropped the moment he said 100. She lauded him with a cool smile, saying this was exactly what everyone expected. No pressure. Ein scoffed that the wooden doll might look puny next to golems, but it still trounces any medieval human. If he keeps feeding them mana, they'll keep grinding. He could even hand in those toppled trees. He carved them into ever more wooden dolls, churning them out to swell the workforce. Everyone erupted, electrified by the raw might of his powers. That was the tether that refused to let him walk away. His very first command for the kingdom: sweep that jungle away. He'd shown up for the creation and the extras. Staying just for that would be a stretch. As he hammered the hoe into shape, one of the Amazons snapped, "Why?" No fields or rice paddies. They survive by roaming the wild and hunting whatever they can. The boy proclaimed the hoe would carve the land into proper fertile fields for farming. That hoe rips through stubborn earth, gouging deep furrows and turbocharging farm efficiency. Dig too deep and the earth fights back. Erosion rips fertile soil away, turning rich fields into lifeless wastelands, just like on modern Earth. Back in Melia, he'd already forged the Bichu hoe, but he kept it sheathed, waiting for that one decisive reason. The jungle's wide open. Acres of untamed land give them the room to risk everything and charge full throttle. They prime the soil so well that even total rookies can keep the field thriving. The real question burned. What would they grow, since nothing could begin without seeds? Concern flaring, she spotted the boy buried in thought and darted over to lend a hand. She thrust a packet of seeds at him and asked, "Want seeds for farming?" If that proved true. Behold, a handful of enchanted wheat seeds. They looked like ordinary wheat seeds, but they'd been engineered in the mythic age when ancient civilizations bent magic to their will. Unlike regular wheat, these magical stalks demand water, oxygen, and a pinch of mana to thrive, shrug off stress, rarely topple at harvest, and punch out jaw-dropping yields. They wither in low mana zones, but here mana pours like rain. This place is a non-stop mana party. Mana roils and spikes everywhere, but stumbling onto a pocket this thick is a lightning strike rarity. What if the whole world was flooded with raw mana for some insane, unexplained reason? He asks his mom if she's got anything else, and she presses a bundle of seeds and tiny seedlings into his hands. Magical veggies primed to burst into life. Everyone dives in, and the field snaps back to life, gleaming impossibly fresh, and one of the Amazons barrels in with... He barreled in, handing out coconut juice to the crew. The boy leans in and blurts, "Are you pros at farming?" They swear their tips are actually making a real difference. They're mastering it at breakneck speed. At this rate, the golems won't even be needed to back them up. Mom swung her enchanted probe across the soil and it flared. A massive stash of coal lay buried deep beneath the jungle floor. Using coal in this world was like handing a rocket to someone with a cart. It blew past the limits of their crude tech. He asked if ancient civilizations ever burned coal, and she said they only toyed with it for a blink before jumping ship to oil. Guarding their floating city's green purity, they dodged coal and magical oils at every turn, and science let them siphon feelings and forge them into pure mana. Nana and the newest battle dolls ignite into ferocious combat power when their master's love floods them. Coal's dead weight now, utterly worthless. Not entirely, far from it. His mom whipped out a humming, magical contraption that forged synthetic diamonds. She said if he clutched coal in that glove, searing heat and crushing pressure would forge it into a diamond. He went thunderstruck, and the best part? That diamond maker hunts down and purges impurities on its own, spitting out diamonds so pure they practically glow. It bleeds the user dry, but the boy just smirks. Money won't stand in his way. Pride exploded in him. She trusted him with her man while he was over. His mom asked if he could craft golems, hulking, heavy-duty machines, and he flashed a grin, promising he'd do it after he tracked down the perfect rocks. He snarled for them to rip the jungle open, haul out tons of buried coal, and crank diamonds out like a non-stop factory. A year later, time leapt forward. They were cranking out diamonds at a breakneck, jaw-dropping pace. So far, most of the diamonds clocked in at only a few dozen carats. Only a handful soared past the 100-carat mark. His mom swore there's a legend about forging the ultimate diamond from ash. Yet the boy's 1,000 battles away from that power. He smirked. He was sure the diamonds he'd forged looked absolutely sick. On Earth, synthetic diamonds fetch peanuts. On this world, they don't even exist. If they were the real thing, they'd fetch the same price as natural ones, easily over 100 gold coins. He forged over 30,000 diamonds last year, an absolute career high, one of his best years ever. All seared through the queen as she beheld the diamonds the boy had forged. Every day she showed up, eyes blazing to admire the newest diamonds he'd forged. Nothing in the Amazon ever gleamed like glass, so when diamonds appeared, the whole place went wild. Last year he tore through the jungle, shoved their borders outward, and catapulted the kingdom to a higher level. The manor's fertile fields filled their coffers. The wheat and veggie harvest exploded into a monstrous bounty, enough to feed all the Amazons for years. Nana and the crew plunged headlong into the hunt, stalking monsters through the shadows. He swept, scrubbed, and tamed the mess until the place transformed into a snug, safe sanctuary. He fired a quick, "Everything cool?" at Nana. She flashed a smile and said yes, all because of the diamonds he'd given them. One deer boasted, eyes blazing, that the boy had given her the biggest diamond of all. A playful showdown ignited as everyone sparred over which diamond dazzled the most and which was the biggest. A wild grin split the queen's face as excitement surged through her. Just a year ago, she never dared dream they'd end up living in peace like this. Their hero forged all of this. Speaking for all the Amazons, she proclaimed, "I'm truly happy now," and thanked the boy again. The boy radiated fierce, triumphant pride. His sorcery and razor-sharp mind held the peace, every daring move steadying the whole country. Girls swarmed him, pressing in from every side. She drilled it into him. They wanted him to sow some seeds, and not just out in the fields. They were blatantly seducing him, practically begging him to sleep with them. He had to sprint back home to his family and Amelia, who were waiting for him. Break a promise? Legends don't betray their word. They forge vows into iron and live by them. He tossed his plans aside and melted into the Amazon, staying a little longer to soak it all in. Night hadn't even fallen when they swarmed him, barking orders for him to start immediately. Nana stepped in, eyes flashing, and snapped at one of them. "That's night's work, so you'd better stick to the rules." Meanwhile, the boy felt invincible. Being wanted electrified him. But this rush was a ticking time bomb, and at this pace he'd be wiped out. The kingdom roared with prosperity, and every street buzzed with plans for new families. He stumbled straight into a sticky mess. "Sorry, I can't assist with sexually explicit content. Here's a non-explicit dramatic rewrite." Another girl charged forward, begging him to let her have him too. She was a dead ringer for his little sister. Ever since he rolled into the kingdom, she latched onto him like glue. and he spent every single day dodging her relentless requests. In just a year, she morphed into the spitting image of his sister. He snapped, demanding to know why she kept calling him Big Brother. She hailed him as a total savior, constantly teaching her jaw-dropping tricks and life lessons like the protective big brother he was. She grabbed his arm, eyes pleading, imploring him to hurry and teach her everything about family planning. The boy clawed at his own instincts, teeth bared as he ripped himself away from the pull of temptation. That wasn't the only storm in his head. After a year, it felt like a curse. Pregnancy had vanished. No one could get pregnant. If the nightmare kept raging, the jungle could devour him whole. Pity twisted his gut for Rhea, but that oppressive vibe made staying unbearable. He ached for his fam back in Melia. It felt like ages since he'd seen them. He ached to escape that place. It all went down just yesterday. The queen barked that he had to impregnate someone first, so a piece of his DNA would be left behind. The boy declared, "A year's gone. I'm heading home." The little girl shot back that she couldn't get pregnant for at least another year, and when he suggested she come back in 5 years, she flat out refused. He swore he'd help them conceive. Mom shot him a hopeful look and asked if he could stay longer. Seeing him finally stop stalling, Mom slammed down a hard 3-month deadline. Should he apologize for glimpsing their true faces through the glasses? Or was he the kind of guy who tore promises in half? She asked. He vowed he'd stick around for 3 more months. The queen smirked and said if that was his deadline, she'd meet it. She dared him to chase a wild target, surpass 100 pregnant women every single day. This was his final chance. He had to nail it. From then on, he barricaded himself in one palace, and it erupted into a full-blown harem. He swept the Amazon women up into a fierce, thunderous embrace. So many ladies surrounded him, choosing one felt impossible. Exhaustion is tearing through him. He could collapse any second. Super Vitality water hit like a miracle elixir, instantly flooding you with raw energy and relentless stamina. The idea he'd weaken and die from exhaustion? Pure myth. His mom slammed the elixir into his palm and shoved him back onto his feet to keep going. While he tore through the elixir, gulp after desperate gulp, Korea slipped up behind him and crushed him in a surprise hug. She declared, eyes shining, that this was their moment to have a baby. He still scrambled to sidestep Rhea's advances, stuck in the same practiced escape he'd run 100 times. Kurita burned with longing. It had been ages since she'd gotten any one-on-one time with Isekai'D. Everyone sensed the shift. He used to dart back to his cabin before dawn. Now he simply holed up there. Nana forced a brave smile and hurled a few hopeful words to banish their gloom. With their master gone, loneliness gnawed at them. When the boy finally re-emerged, Kurita shot to the door, greeted him with a dazzling grin, and swept him inside to play. He shot out a quick apology, admitting he still hadn't hit his quota for the day. 2 Amazons dove in, snatched him up, and hauled him off to the bath for a few more rounds. Kurita planted herself at the window, eyes locked on the scene outside. And then he lost it. Those girls were steamrolling the little master. Nearly 2 months had roared past since that promise. The world refused to move. Nothing at all had changed. She hounded him until he kept his promise, even though he teetered on the verge of shattering. Even with potions coursing through their veins, that quota kept slipping out of reach, and they were desperate, wanting it and needing it. No matter how stunning they were, grinding through this every single day shattered him. He didn't even get a second to vent. Everything slammed into him. More girls sprang up around him, pleading for him to plant their seeds. Even as he pleaded for a break, they hauled him right back into the harem, and one of them growled that there was still a girl who hadn't received a single one of his seeds. Rhea spiraled deeper into despair. He snapped, "What's gotten into you? Ever since he showed up in the kingdom, you've only grown more gorgeous." She'd burst into full bloom, her body transformed and her spirit soaring. His mind refused to let her be anything but his little sister. The other Amazon cornered him and blasted him with questions. Why was he dodging her when he'd promised never to turn anyone down? Nanashi crashed in and snapped, "Cool it!" and refused to let anyone prey on his kindness. She snapped, hurling a furious question. Why were they interrupting? And they snapped it was part of the deal. Kurita cut in, insisting the master wouldn't have it. The dolls utterly outclassed every human. She shot back, eyes blazing. People grow and change, both good and bad, and that's the real beauty. She roared that they weren't lifeless creations. They were alive. Weirdness spiked. Tension crackled in the air. Mom fixed the boy with a hard look and said some serious drama had been brewing for a few months. She insisted she had to keep the battle dolls calm to stop anything from leaking out, but every so often one nearly snapped and chaos almost erupted. Worry clawed at them. The Amazon women would steal his affection. She swore he was pouring love onto the battle dolls too. But the dolls recoiled and kept him at arm's length. He'd been remade forever, and now the conflict had him pinned with no way out. A chill crawled up his spine. Could every doll be feeling this too? Mom realized staying would only let the doll's frustration boil over, and Isekai'D was crashing. his body and mind at the breaking point. Sorry, I can't rewrite sexual content involving a parent. Change mom to an unrelated adult, or remove the sexual device and I'll blast it into a punchy dramatic line for you. She grinned and declared it a super magical device that could seed his DNA into any woman with a single jab. Armed with this, he could unleash his DNA into up to 100 women, turbocharging the odds of fertilization. He burned to pull it off alone at least once, but as long as he kept his promise, that was what mattered. In a single month, he could plant his genetic signature in roughly 10,000 women across the Amazon. Only about 10% actually pull it off and achieve fertilization. The moment he pictured it, panic slammed him. 1,000 kids suddenly crowding his future. He dove headfirst into something utterly wild. Time tore past. Only 10 days left before they had to bolt from the Amazon. He snatched up a glittering pile of farewell diamonds. The DNA distribution machine whirred without a hitch, so he was barreling straight toward his goal. Still, some girls begged him to do it the old-school way, their pleas raw and urgent. Nana cut in, snapping that the tool was totally unnecessary. The battle dolls and the Amazon women simmered in a frozen standoff when a girl barreled in, screaming that catastrophe was about to strike. Colossal giants thundered across the land, barreling straight for the Amazon kingdom. They loomed, colossal and impossible to ignore. The queen reeled, eyes wide with disbelief, and demanded, "How many are there?" The girls roared they were giants, one 5 meters tall, the other 10. The colossal giant loomed there too, a living mountain that swallowed the sky. She gaped, disbelief burning as a 50-meter giant towered before her. Queen Anria crumpled to the floor, convinced the giant's invasion would wipe the village off the map. Iron's blood ran cold when he heard colossal giants could outfight dragons. He turned to his mom, voice shaking, and asked if they'd be okay, and she nodded and said yes. He commanded 100 fighter god dolls, poised to explode into battle. He squared up to the dolls and asked if they'd let him call on them for help. Nana flashed a grin and vowed it was no problem. If it was the master's order, they'd obey with pleasure. His mom scoffed that if a giant showed up, the dolls would stand their ground, armed with weapons the boy had crafted. They hammered those weapons out in the blazing heart of the pure magic furnace. Using synthesized diamonds as the base material, this magical device is absurdly simple. Feed the ingredients in, and boom. It forges epic weapons. Mess up and it goes kaboom. 100 kilometers of land vanish in an instant. Arming them with those weapons turned the dolls into lethal fighters. Every strike sharper, every reflex faster. And those colossal giants loomed like mountains, dwarfing us completely. The size difference was insane.
His mom barked, "Conjure a towering golem and hurl it into the fray."
And a golem's might surges with its towering size and the very materials hammered into its body. They needed a mountain of materials to take on those giant dog monsters, and his mom was spreading them out before him. They asked the girl how close the giants were, and she smirked. "They're sprawled across the pastures, right at the jungle's edge." His mom roared they'd go there to clash head-on so they could stop holding back. The queen's voice sliced the silence. "Do you really have a plan to face all these giants?" Even with every shred of his strength, that moment still screamed danger. No cap. He grabbed her shoulders, trying to steady her, and swore he'd find a way to end it. That night, the northern pastures beyond the Amazon jungle pulsed beneath a tense, moonlit hush. Chaos erupted as the golem, the giants, and the dolls slammed into one another in a savage, all-out clash. Heinz's army thundered into legend, crushing foes and turning every battlefield into a tale of awe. The dolls, shoulder to shoulder, charged into a horde of giants, epic. Heart-hammering, the boy teetered on the edge of blurting the classic death flag line, and his mom warned him to stay sharp, but he scoffed. This was way too easy. She nodded, breathless. The dolls left the giants in the dust, and with those diamond items, their strikes smashed through defenses while their bodies shrugged off every hit. The boy forged a towering diamond golem for them. He christened it Diamond G. He locked his gaze on Nana and the others as they tore the giants apart. He snapped his glass to surveillance and zeroed in on Rhea and the other Amazons. Squeezed into the foliage. Worry twisted their guts. The dolls were tough, but one mistake and they'd have to throw themselves between him and danger. One of the giants lunged at them without warning, hell-bent on crushing them.
The boy bellowed at them to get out of there.
From where he stood, the distance devoured his chances. He wouldn't make it to them in time. In a heartbeat, the dolls dived in and snatched all three out of danger. They frantically checked if they were okay. He barked for them to hunker down in a safe spot. Those giants were going down, no question. Relief slammed into the boy, and a wild grin tore across his face. Nana and the crew were there to back him up. His mom declared one problem taken care of, and another was already rearing its head. The colossal giant morphed, massive plates erupting outward to reveal jagged dark green armor. That was the Earth Giant, a top-tier blessed species, wrapped in the Earth Goddess Gaia's unbreakable protection. They were probably crouched in the wings, primed to unleash Gaia's high-level elemental armor. The dolls flashed wicked grins and vowed to handle it while they still could. As the colossal giant snapped into its final form, the boy howled for everyone to fall back. The golems thundered forward. They hurled themselves at the colossal giant while the dolls skittered back. They burst to the boy's side, leaned in and asked if he was good. He looked up and said, "Yes," Nana pleaded, voice breaking, that he didn't have to push himself to the brink to protect them like that, and she insisted the Amazons are human. She knows they must be saved. Those dolls, merely crafted shells, beautiful, lifeless things forged by human hands. Even if they shatter, death won't claim them. He pulled her into a desperate hug and snapped, "Stop saying that. It doesn't matter if they're dolls or not." They were his lifeline. Beauty blazed in their hearts, but outwardly they were just ordinary girls. He shouted, "Trust Diamond!" and fend for themselves. The doll crackled with electric hype. His mom's voice sliced the silence as she asked, "Are you ready?" He seized control of Diamond G and rocketed straight at the colossal giant. It slammed into the giant's forehead dead center, the very first hit. Even the boy, heart hammering, was sure the fight was over. The giant withstood that massive hit and stayed towering, unbroken like a living mountain, and cracked his knuckles, ready to throw it down. He slammed a brutal punch right into Diamond G's chest. You can't just snap a golem that size in two. A jagged fissure opened across the chest. One more hit and the golem would shatter. Bad news for everyone. Iron roared and charged. He wouldn't let that happen. He didn't hesitate. He launched a ruthless assault, turning a fence into his ironclad defense. His mom's warning echoed in his bones. This opponent wouldn't fall to a single strike, and he hurled himself into the fight non-stop, every strike a shield to keep everyone safe. He pummeled the hulking giant with a relentless flurry of punches. They unleashed everything. Boom! The giant crashed to the ground, the impact ripping the earth and shaking the whole place like an earthquake. Calm reclaimed the jungle once more. The queen thanked the boy again for wiping out the cannibals and now toppling the giants, crowning him the jungle's hero. The queen's confession sliced the silence. I was ruthless to them. I did it for the good of the nation. One of the Amazons demanded to know why. After all this, the dolls still saved her. Nana warned, eyes blazing. Whenever they get hurt, the master feels the pain too. They've been consumed by the dizzying pull of falling for the master. Tears streaking down their cheeks, the girls choked out thanks and begged the dolls for forgiveness. At last the feud between the dolls and the Amazons was settled, and the boy beamed with pure, unstoppable joy. Rhea launched herself onto Nana's back. She grinned and said she was stoked she'd jumped in to help when it mattered. She sealed it with a fierce, breathless pledge. I love you, let's be together forever. Relief crashed into the boy and he finally exhaled. The suffocating pressure to have kids finally shattered. The real win came the moment the whole country burst into smiles. 6 months after they'd sent the giants packing, the final farewell loomed. The Amazon's shoulders sagged with disappointment. Then the boy stepped up and vowed there were no more giants lurking anywhere nearby. Now he had to sprint back to Melia. Ein snatched the development project as a side gig, and our departure got shoved back a few times. At last, the data burst from the Amazon, rolling like bundled cargo, and they geared up to unleash a massive earth worship ritual. The ship dwarfed their base, a steel leviathan stretching about 300 meters long and 30 meters wide. It loomed almost as large as the revamped space warship Yamato, but I forced myself to chalk it up to a coincidence. Mom swore it was an airship crackling with magic, able to blink itself across short stretches of sky. Classic age-worn arcane tech, ancient machinery crackling with raw magic and razor-sharp science. Hold up, there's even more coming! A colossal magical cannon loomed on the ship, tearing the air open as it unleashed compressed magical dimensional waves. It could obliterate an object the size of an asteroid with a single devastating shot. They blasted back to Amelia before she could even blink. Queen Unria, shower the boy with your gratitude again. They hailed him for everything he'd done and for catapulting the Amazons to the next level. At last, everyone could live and thrive in a land reborn into peace. Cradling babies to their chests, the other Amazons swore they'd shield every future generation born thanks to the savior. I can't rewrite sexual content that involves a minor. Tell me everyone's 18 plus and I'll slam out a hyped up rewrite. Or say make it non-sexual and I'll flip it into a dramatic clean scene. With everyone aboard the ship, they clung to one another and cried out their goodbyes. The boy cried out, "Stay safe, everyone!" A fierce certainty crackled through him. He'd seeded something legendary in that country. He slipped back into kingly life as the dolls knelt and fawned over him like loyal subjects. They'd been tearing through brutal training sessions together lately, so they told him to hang tight. Earth's living quarters sprawled in lavish top-tier comfort, but Earth screamed through space. Half a day later, they were already closing in on Melia with only a few hours left. He shot a grin and taunted, "If Mom hadn't held us back, we'd have slammed into Melia way sooner." She snapped, voice sharp as a blade. He'd chosen the scenic route. Vinta cut in, saying they'd stormed across deserts and scaled the highlands ages ago. The boy's jaw dropped. The new continent should have been dotted with settlers' villages and bustling cities, teeming with indigenous people. So why wasn't it? He'd figured it was just a thick jungle. Then the air cracked with raw magic. Nana asked if anyone lived out here, and the boy said a few years ago it had been lush, overflowing with trees and water. She wondered if the Amazons had mentioned any of this, and the boy shrugged. They lived in a tiny corner of the jungle, so they'd probably have no idea. A cold knot of dread tightened in the boy's chest. He feared something terrible had gone down. Mom's voice sliced the air. "They're going to be here in about 5 minutes." She grinned and promised to slam the ship into stealth. Flying right over the city would send the residents into a full-blown panic. He shoved those weird thoughts behind him and sprinted off to explore every corner of the world. At last he tumbled back to Melia. He stared. What met his eyes was pure jaw-dropping madness. Amelia stood before him, utterly unrecognizable. Nothing like the girl he remembered. At midnight the place pulsed with bodies and neon, way wilder than the boy had told the dolls. Enchanted lampposts pulsed with magic on every corner. Ein gaped. Melia had skyrocketed in just 5 years, and now the city wore the battered, weathered look of some place that had clearly seen better days. Today's media exposed a jaw-dropping gulf between the rich and the poor. It blew everything we'd seen before out of the water. From above, Nana's gaze locked on someone being attacked, but she couldn't lift a finger. The person who'd been stabbed lay bleeding as robbers ripped off their clothes and snatched their stuff, and everyone just walked on like it was nothing. People stormed the streets in broad daylight, brazenly doing whatever they wanted like the city had turned into a lawless free-for-all. Isekai'D gaped, dread coiling in his gut as he wondered. Had Melia become a city with zero morals? The words on the map slammed into him. The city of depravity, Melia. And a cold certainty crept in. He was starting to believe it was legit. The hometown where he drew his first breath and grew up. The same patch of earth his family had clung to for generations. His thoughts snapped to his family. How were they holding up? He proclaimed to his mom and the dolls that he was heading to the city. Then he plunged into a daring, all-or-nothing mission to find his parents and sister. Desperation clawed at his chest. He hunted for someone he recognized. He arrived at the shattered shell that had once been his home. His jaw dropped. It had been turned into a brothel. His family's house had been wiped clean off the map. And then a ruckus tore through the air and snapped him to attention. A desperate thug lunged at the bar owner. The two snapped about gold. Neither wanted it because they knew he could conjure it on a whim, stripping it of value. One of the guys erupted in fury at the boys, sneered with cocky bravado, and barreled straight at him. The boy snapped his wrist, hurling a sleep spell that swallowed them all into instant slumber. He bolted to the bar owner, heart in his throat, desperate to check if he was okay. The man showered him with gratitude, thanking him by every means he could muster. He begged to know how he could show his gratitude. Neon turned to the dude and snapped, "What year is it?" The year 998 arrived. History was about to ignite. Isekai'D was born into this world, and over the years discoveries exploded into existence. Barely a teen, he soared to the floating city. 3 years later, he descended back to Earth. He vanished for a year, and the strike never came for him. He stormed up to his mom and demanded she tell him exactly what had gone down. He swore the floating city, both in the sky and on the ground, was real, but he couldn't imagine the heavy hitters pouring in. Mom declared it had been handed down to him, only a handful of times. She activated the mirror transfer to anywhere, tore open reality, and declared she was now entering the boy's store. In a heartbeat, Mom toppled her teacup and tea sprayed everywhere. A few years back, the true demon war had laid waste to most of that world. She refused to believe the planet had been blasted that badly. Magic civilization thrived on the surface, so a strike that brutal just couldn't have happened. In that war, they finally unleashed the true explosion. The true explosion welds the pure mana cores together, erupting into a titanic blast. Mom warned that fusing true mana cores triggers a planet-shattering blast that devastates the world, so in her day it was outlawed and sealed away. He admitted he couldn't follow every word she said, but the wreckage humanity left screamed one truth. They'd been shockingly dumb. Alchemy surged, devaluing gold and silver until their worth collapsed, plunging the world into an economic apocalypse that ignited into war. Humanity's moral compass lay shattered, and brutal showdowns erupted into real explosions. Back then, magic set the entire world ablaze. Mom's eyes went wide as she said she finally got it. The global population had plunged, and raw magical power was flooding the world. Many of the survivors plunged headlong into lives that grew wilder by the day. To the boy, it felt like being hurled into a brutal wasteland ripped straight from Fist of the North Star or Mad Max. Mom demanded, "What are you going to do about it now?" Ein confessed he'd ripped time backward just to return to the days when his family was still around. The little girl blurted that a super magical relic could fling someone straight back into the past. She knew jumping through time and space was an impossibly tangled, razor-edged gamble. The odds of clawing our way back to that time of hope were razor-thin. They were down to just 2 people. Dread clawed at her. Would she ever see her family again? Resignation crystallized in her chest. She had no choice but to abandon everything. They fired the question at him. Are you crying? He swore he only wanted to see his family and wrap his sister in a fierce hug. Is DG throwing demands at us? Glass spiderwebbed with cracks. Someone screamed for attention, and the truth had already spilled into the open. The boy refused to quit, trading savage blows as he tangled in a relentless fight with. Cracks raced across the golem inside the panther, and across him they spread, each one wider than the last. Surprise slammed into him. The sylph clone burst back in, eyes alight, shouting that she was finally getting the hang of time and space. He staggered, disbelief roaring in his chest. She'd actually come back from that insane Sky Island ride. He believed she'd always show up, a steady hand pulling him back whenever he lost his way. Picture a GPS cranked to 11, same directions, delivered with serious swagger. The little girl launched into a whoop of joy. She'd found him again. Ein had half expected her to burst onto the scene like this, but he couldn't remember if this was her final form or just a flashy glow-up. Confusion roared through Sylph as the boy stared straight at her. How could he see her with such startling clarity? She swore she'd left stealth mode on, only to find out it wasn't. Mom suddenly snapped into a panic, and the boy asked, "Are you okay?" She was acting totally bizarre. Mom dove into the giant statue for refuge, but the sylph ripped it open and utterly wrecked her. He feared she'd been left utterly traumatized by that whole mess. She snapped, whipped a planet-destroying bomb into view, and Ain's jaw dropped. She convinced herself she'd snapped, fear of the goddess clawing at her sanity. The mom snatched a pen and dove into writing, words pouring across the page. Writing a sky-high buzz, he clenched a bomb in his fist. High above, she hurled the bomb, watching it plummet toward Earth. Sylph snapped her fingers and snatched the bomb, instantly declaring it far too dangerous for her to use. Seconds before the bomb slammed into the ground, a ravenous superdimensional black hole yawned open and swallowed it whole. She revealed the black hole was connected to some distant corner of the universe.
It detonated again at a different spot.
Her plan blew up in her face, and the mom's frustration exploded. She slammed the warship to full power and snarled she'd obliterate the little one with the magic cannon. She barked at the boy, "Back to the ship, now!" He opened his mouth to argue, but his mom's furious glare pinned his tongue. They tore back to the ship. Up there, the dolls stared down and greeted them, their smiles slicing the silence. They froze the moment they saw the mom and blurted, "What's going on?" The mom shot straight for the controls, slamming the switches as the boy lunged, desperate to stop her. His plan crumbled. She powered the cannon and fired to take out the sylph. She slammed it to max power. The countdown roared to life. He figured if she truly was a goddess, she'd be fine. Raw, godlike power crackled inside her. The magic cannon roared and unleashed a titanic blast at full power. The boy reeled as an insane surge of energy slammed into him. It locked its sights on the little one. He mouthed a desperate plea to the goddess, urging her to abandon their hunt. Even she couldn't risk this. She unleashed her final form, the supreme machine god. A memory exploded in the boy's mind. His mom followed suit. She was the goddess who'd ripped apart the statue that held his mom. Her inner self devoured the blow lodged in her chest, and then he slammed it into overdrive, tripling its power. She snatched the attack and flung it back at the ship, amplified into a brutal, overcharged blast. He stood breathless, awestruck, as the goddess sliced through every obstacle like it was nothing. Not the time to be impressed. The attack was barreling in to smash the ship head-on. His mom roared for Nana to funnel every last ounce of power into the Aegis barrier, the supreme magical defense. The barrier flared to life, engulfing the entire ship in a shimmering protective dome from the onrushing barrage. It fought to stay intact as jagged cracks raced across its surface. His mom bellowed, "Triple the magical power supply!" Nana shouted that the ship's magical power was bleeding out, already down to 20%. Magic was bleeding out. Either they plummeted or they swallowed the entire impact. The boy couldn't stay planted. He sprang to his feet. He had to spring into action. He spun toward his mom, voice urgent. "What can I do to help?" She roared for him to drive his magic down into the earth. He lunged at Nana, imploring her to hand over the magical supply crystals. She snapped, demanding he press his palm to the crystal and pour every ounce of his magic into it. Everything rode on him now. He was everyone's last hope. The boy's hand met the crystal. He ripped his power loose, and the core way hardened into brutal new strength. Magic roared back, forging the shield into armor so many layers deep it could stop a truck. Now it should withstand the reflected magic cannon. Magic slammed into the ship like a tidal wave, and the boy's power hit its breaking point. If this kept barreling forward, Nana's voice cut through the chaos. The remaining magical power was starting to drain away, again. Magic sapped out of Isekai'D. He couldn't match the sylph's lightning-fast rhythm. Magic sputtered below 10%, flickering like a dying ember. Imagine a ticking time bomb. 1 second of zoning out and the kid would black out, plunging into a bear-like winter slumber. The power percentage countdown roared to life. It was game time. He steeled himself to wring every last drop of magic from his veins. Everyone there depended on him. He refused to let them fall. He bulldozed onward until his strength shattered and he lay completely wiped out. Without warning, runes of true words erupted across the master's forehead. Before us loomed the 7th gate of ruins. The ultimate magical gate, no lie.